Chapter 1708, Which Esteemed Guest? Long Gaofei's face immediately darkened. He actually dared to kick open their main doors? Didn't he know that the Lord Holy Sun was also here? If the Holy Sun was offended, who could bear this responsibility? How dare you, he shouted harshly. The elder who entered bore an expression filled with killing intent. He swept an eye over Long Gaofei, and calmly commanded, "Tell that despicable brat, Ling Han, to come out." When Long Gaofei heard this, his expression became incredibly strange. This brat was a little too capable, wasn't he? He had already reminded everyone so many times previously that they had to keep a low profile, and not to cause unnecessary trouble. But what did Ling Han do? He had silently become friends with Changsun Liang. This was a good thing, at least, but this man before his eyes was definitely not here to drink tea with Ling Han. This person was very strong. Long Gaofei frowned, and asked, "Second severance?" The elder showed a hint of pride. Tong clan, Tong Jinyun. The Tong clan had found out the truth from Lu Muyu's mouth, and they were naturally all enraged. As it turned out, Tong Lin had actually died in such a wronged manner, and had even compelled a fourth severance grand elder to humbly apologize to a Genesis tier for the sake of this matter. Even if Changsun Liang was the Holy Sun, this was still a disgrace. For the clan, the Tong clan's ancestor had borne with it. As the saying went, with a little forbearance, one would find calm and peace. But they had never thought that all this was a trap that someone had set. Just a minor character from a mere one-star city, and he actually caused the death of a member of the Tong clan, and even forced the Tong clan's ancestor to lower his head in apology. If they did not seek vengeance for this misdeed, how was the Tong clan going to remain in their circle? Thus, Tong Jinyun had come. He was a second severance elite, which was enough to suppress Long Gaofei. If they sent out anyone too powerful, wasn't that giving Ling Han too much regard? So it is Lord Tong. Long Gaofei clasped his hands in respect. The fourth severance of severing Mundane tier was equivalent to 4 great mountains. Ascending different peaks would mean possessing completely different status. Hence, even though the two of them only had a gap of a minor level between them, the actual gap between them was astonishing, whether it was in terms of status or strength. "Don't say any more nonsense. Tell that despicable brat, Ling Han, to come out," Tong Jinyun declared darkly. He actually dared trick their Tong clan. He was really outrageously brazen. Today, no matter what, he would kill Ling Han, and let everyone know that the pride of the Tong clan could not be impinged upon. Long Gaofei was filled with confidence. Smiling calmly, he said, "At this time, Ling Han is accompanying an esteemed guest, so I'm afraid that he can't come out to see you, my lord." Tong Jinyun's eyes involuntarily widened in a glare. What a joke. As a mere Genesis tier brat, what esteemed guest could he possibly be receiving? In other words, what esteemed guest would have a more powerful background than him? No wonder he dared to set up a trap to harm their Tong clan. This brat was indeed arrogant. No, it was not just that despicable brat that was arrogant, this old geezer was also quite arrogant. Otherwise, how could he have taught such an arrogant junior? "Are you brushing me off?" Tong Jinyun questioned menacingly. All of a sudden, a heavy pressure weighed down. This glare was definitely enough to make any Genesis tier feel weak in the knees, and completely lose all battle prowess, but even if Long Gaofei was no match for the other party, he was still a first severance elite, so he could not possibly be intimidated with just a single look. He chuckled, and replied, "Of course not. Ling Han is really entertaining an esteemed guest at this moment." "Oh, then I really would like to see how esteemed this esteemed guest is." Tong Jinyun felt his fury blazing. He decided internally that he would thrash that esteemed guest along with Ling Han as well. What esteemed guest? In his eyes, they were all trash. He strode out, and Long Gaofei naturally could not manage to stop him. He could only follow behind him. Pung! Tong Jinyun did not tell Long Gaofei to point out which room belonged to Ling Han either, but rather kicked open the doors of each room one after another. In the first room, Wei Bo looked back expressionlessly. In the second room, Qin Hanyu looked back expressionlessly. In the third room, everyone could hear the conversation that had commenced outside, so they were prepared, and did not lose their heads in a panic. Yet when he kicked open the doors to the sixth room, Ding Xiaochen's face was filled with resentment. He was too innocent here. He was archenemies with Ling Han, yet because of his connection with Ling Han, he was implicated. He was really too wronged here. But he was praying secretly in his heart that Tong Jinyun could kill Ling Han with a single palm strike. There was only one room left. Peng, the doors to the room were kicked open, revealing the three people that were inside. There were two men and one woman, who were seated, facing each other, and were presently sipping tea, and talking about something. You guys are really quite calm and collected. Tong Jinyun humphed coldly, and demanded, this esteemed guest, turn around and let me have a look. Changsun Liang turned around as he asked, and looked at Tong Jinyun expressionlessly. Holy Sun. Tong Jinyun immediately gasped out in shock, his expression varying wildly. It was practically switching from one color to another in quick succession, such that no one could imagine that a human face could actually have so many expressions, and switch expressions at such a rapid pace. Changsun Liang smiled calmly, and said, now that you have seen this holy sun, what do you want to do? Though he was only in Genesis tier, his status was clear. He was the gem of the Black Moon sect, bearing the hopes of all the powerful figures of the sect. If he was injured, even if it was a slight scratch on his finger, that would be enough to make the heavens collapse. With any dividing soul tier elite moving out, the Tong clan would instantly be razed to the ground, disappearing in the pages of history. By now, Tong Jinyun was really filled with bitter regret. How could he have possibly imagined that this esteemed guest would actually be Changsun Liang? How could a minor character from a one-star city have possibly made a connection with the holy son of the Black Moon sect? Furthermore, this was Changsun Liang himself who was personally paying a visit to Ling Han, and this was even more inconceivable. I did not know the holy sun was here, and have caused much offense. Please forgive my offense, holy sun. Tong Jinyun could only apologize now. If Changsun Liang was really determined to deal with the Tong clan, even if Tong clan was a member of the Black Moon sect, so what? Changsun Liang calmly said, if this holy sun were not here, you would simply barge in without any reservations. Lord Tong, you have to understand this is the territory of the sect, and not the private property of your Tong clan. These words were said harshly, scaring Tong Jinyun so much that he knelt down, no longer caring about any loss of face anymore. If Changsun Liang wanted to perform an in-depth investigation, it would not be a matter that only involved him, but would rather implicate the entire Tong clan. Please forgive me, Lord Holy Sun. Changsun Liang did not show any anger or shock, and kept a calm and composed expression, displaying the amount of control that a person in noble standing would have. Since you were the one who had kicked through the doors of this place, then it would be your responsibility to repair all of them. Lord Tong, are you convinced? Convinced, the Lord Holy Sun's words speak true, I am convinced. Tong Jinyun hurriedly lowered his head. Ling Han watched avidly. Should he go and get the label of a holy sun himself as an intimidation tactic? Go on. Changsun Liang waved him off dismissively. Tong Jinyun quickly scrambled up from the ground, and obediently went off to repair the doors. Seeing the old man repairing the doors that he had initially kicked through in an amateurish manner, everyone was gaping and dumbstruck. They felt as if they were about to go blind. Long Gaofei, meanwhile, was secretly pleased. Little guy, weren't you very arrogant just now? Go on and continue being arrogant, idiot. After repairing 10 doors, Tong Jinyun first apologized to Changsun Liang again, and only then did he leave with his tail between his legs. Changsun Liang smiled, and said, Brother Ling, I should also leave. I offer you advance congratulations for obtaining the first place in this competition. Though there were still a few days before the competition would begin, the result was practically assured. He stood up, yet suddenly coughed out, and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Chapter 1709, Finally Becoming Saint King. Ling Han frowned, and asked, Brother Changsun's injuries haven't recovered yet? Previously, his and Changsun Liang's spirits had exchanged blows, and struck each other once. Ling Han came out of it practically unscathed, but Changsun Liang was not as freakish as he was, and his spirit had sustained severe injury. Such an injury wouldn't recover too soon. Furthermore, it was very difficult to use medicines to treat an injury to the spirit. Thankfully, this was the celestial realm, so saintly medicines were commonplace. He would definitely be able to recover after recuperating for a few months' time, and there was no need to worry that it would affect his venture to the severing mundane pool that would take place over a year later. But in the subsequent months, Changsun Liang's battle prowess definitely would not be able to reach its prime. Fortunately, he was a king tier himself, so even if he could only use half of his battle prowess, it would be enough to overwhelm all other Genesis tiers. This recovery ability of yours truly does make me envious. Changsun Liang shook his head. They had both sustained a strike, but looking at how energetic Ling Han was now, he didn't even look like he had been injured at all, did he? Changsun Liang had just left, and Ling Han had a strange expression on his face. He had genuinely touched the doorstep to a breakthrough. The benefits of discussing Dao with the other party were very large, especially with the pinnacle battle that had taken place a few days ago, which helped him settle a great amount of experience. After digesting this experience, he naturally took the final step in the category of immortal level. He headed to a deserted forest to receive his heavenly tribulation. Long tribulation clouds gathered densely. The heavenly tribulation of the celestial realm was much stronger than the heavenly tribulation of the ancient realm, its upper limit reaching as far up as celestial king tier. Ling Han did not dare be impudent, and obediently endured the tempering by the heavenly tribulation. He did not charge into the depths of the tribulation clouds. However, after entering into the celestial realm, his heavenly tribulation had become considerably more normal because there were actually a considerable number of freaks like him in the celestial realm. Half a day later, he had successfully endured the heavenly tribulation, and his godly bones had advanced another level, reaching the height of 1-star pseudo-divine metal. His present battle prowess was still far inferior to a First Severance Grand Elder's, but if a First Severance Grand Elder wanted to kill him, he could only slowly refine him through the power of regulations. If he wanted to kill him directly, it would only end in utter failure. There was actually no pinnacle level to the Genesis tier. Forming more than 10 billion stars was due to being incapable of breaking through to the severing mundane tier. No matter how many stars you formed, you would not be all that much stronger after advancing into the severing mundane tier. At the level of a small world, cultivators mainly focused on power because they were unable to touch regulations yet. When one had reached the ancient realm, the strength of their spirit would have increased, and the strength of the spirit would actually make it easier to grasp regulations. The stronger the regulations one had grasped, the sturdier your spirit would be. And by celestial level, the importance of regulations would far surpass power. This was the most powerful strength of celestials. If the physical body was destroyed, then he would only have to switch to another shell, and his battle prowess would not be very greatly affected. Of course, it was not the original body, so there would definitely be the problem of getting used to it. Battle prowess would not be very affected, but it was very possible that one would have cut off his path of further advancement in future. Thus, no matter how low-grade one's physical body and bloodline were, there was practically not a single cultivator that would be willing to give them up, switch to another body, and start all over again. The next step would be severing mundane tier. Ling Han took a deep breath. He only needed to advance into the severing mundane tier, and he would be able to lay claim to the label of elite in the celestial realm as well. It was unlike the Genesis tier, wherein no matter how excellently he performed, he would only be considered as having potential. Being a severing mundane ancestor meant having a limitless lifespan. One should know how difficult it was to take this step just merely due to this one fact. In the celestial realm, there were as many saints as dogs, and they were all over the place, but as for severing mundane ancestors? There were only a few dozen in a 1-star city, and even in a 2-star city, there were only a few thousand. Compared with the enormous population, this number was really pitifully small. And now, who could be a match for me within the Genesis tier? Ling Han stroked his chin. Unfortunately, I am limited by my cultivation level, and am unable to grasp celestial level regulations. Otherwise, would be able to inscribe celestial level formations in my body, and even a first severance Grand Elder would possibly die at my hand. He was free at the moment anyways, so Ling Han inscribed even more Saint King tier formations inside his body, but no matter how many he inscribed, it was useless. The battle prowess they could show was actually a 10,000th of his own battle prowess. Just how strong have I become? Ling Han himself was dazed. He had inscribed 999 Saint King tier great formations in his body, but they only totaled up to 1/10,000 of his own battle prowess. If Hunyo was still in Genesis tier, that would be great. I would be able to spar with her, and see what level of battle prowess the holy daughter of a top-tier sect would have. The Rock Palace was a celestial king tier force, and Hunyo had also merged with the bloodline of the previous imperial empress as well as other miscellaneous items, so she was definitely in the level of top-tier holy sons and holy daughters. Sigh, I've already come to the celestial realm for quite some time, but I still don't know if the Rock Palace is in the eastern celestial realm or the western celestial realm. What a failure I am. The celestial realm was too expansive. Even an immortal palace tier elite like the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire had only traveled around in the territory of a few celestial kings, such small places that were only 1 or 2 stars, so it was actually very normal for him not to know where the Rock Palace was. Perhaps after I go to the Fu clan, I would be able to at least find out where the Rock Palace is, Ling Han mumbled. He returned to his accommodations, and couldn't help but spar with the Empress in the Black Tower. The result was that the Empress was forced to use all her ultimate moves to be capable of just barely blocking his offensive, and the problem here was Ling Han had not used any kind of celestial technique at all. This level of strength was really a little exaggerated. Another 2 days later, the team competition officially began. In the first round, Dark Moon City drew an empty lot, and in the second round, they drew a weak team which had ranked below 200 in the last competition. Still, what did it matter if it was a strong team or a weak one? They progressed triumphantly all the way, and no team was a match of theirs. The difference lay in how long Ling Han wanted the opposing team to last. After the qualifying rounds ended, the finals began, and 32 teams drew lots once more. The first opponent of Dark Moon City was the champion team from the last competition, the Double Extreme Cities team which was led by Xuanming. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, saying that Dark Moon City's journey as a dark horse would end thus. The present Xuanming's strength would definitely be stronger than in the last competition now that he had settled for a few hundred years. But the matter developed in a way that made all their jaws drop. When the two teams confronted each other, Xuanming actually forfeited. Ling Han, I am indeed no match for you at present, but the breach from the Genesis tier to Severing Mundane tier is too wide. Even if there is a very big difference between us now, this gap would endlessly shrink after advancing into the Severing Mundane tier. By then, I will battle you. Though Xuanming forfeited, he had not lost his fighting spirit. On the contrary, his fighting spirit blazed like fire. Ling Han laughed loudly. This was the kind of competitive spirit that he liked. Even if a battle in the future was inevitable, his heart would still be filled with respect. He nodded, and said, then I will wait expectantly for that. You had best hurry. I have no wish to wait for 10 million years to be able to challenge you. Xuanming waved a hand, and led his team off. If Ling Han missed the opening of the Severing Mundane pool this time, then the next time would be 10 million years later. Though there were still other places that he could sever his mortal bonds, he believed that a prodigy like Ling Han would definitely choose the Severing Mundane pool, even if he had to wait another 10 million years for it. Ling Han involuntarily stroked his chin. Why did everyone think that he would not be able to make it in time for the opening of the Severing Mundane pool? Chapter 1710, A Visitor from Hundred Magnificence City. The defending champion had been eliminated just like that, causing a commotion to rise up among the masses. Was this cheating? But none of the higher-ups of the Black Moon sect naturally shared this thought. They were among those who knew that Ling Han had managed to fight Changsun Liang to a tie. If this kind of strength was still incapable of sweeping aside all his opponents, what justice would there be left in this world? If Ling Han was weak, it would mean that Changsun Liang was weak too. In the top 16, top 8, and top 4 there was not a single team that could match Dark Moon City. Those like Bianzhe who had participated in the great banquet on Celestial Clouds Island, and had met Ling Han before, automatically admitted defeat. There was no need to even commence the battle. This caused Mao Shuyu and the others to feel rather confused. In the qualifiers, they had still had a tough time in the competition, but why had it become smooth sailing now that they were in the finals? This was really bizarre. Yet they were increasingly excited because they only had to win one more battle, and they would become the champion. Champion. The last time they became champions was 3 eras ago, and the Dark Moon team that was led by Mao Dai was similarly invincible and unmatched, but at that time, Mao Dai had at least encountered a few that could match him, which was unlike this time, where all the strong teams surrendered without even a battle. Those who had made a wager could no longer sit still. Those people were clearly cheating here. They raised an objection to the gamble house, and because there really were too many people, it even alerted the higher-ups of the Black Moon sect, and only then did news of that battle on Celestial Clouds Island spread out, and only with that was the dissatisfaction of the masses appeased. So as it turned out, Ling Han was actually so powerful. The opponent of the final battle for Ling Han and his team was Blue Flame City, where Dan Yujing was. This woman was indeed strong. Without Yuan Xingping blocking her way, the team she led had advanced through the competition like a hot knife through butter, charging all the way into the finals. Unfortunately, her next opponent was so strong that they could render anyone hopeless. When the finals were here, a great many people came. The Holy Son, Changsun Liang, also arrived in person. It was possible that he would personally bestow on Ling Han and his team the prize for the championate was not all that generous, just a few star stones. What mattered was the prestige. There were not many people who would not be proud of becoming the champion. To the forces under the rule of the Black Moon sect, Black Moon City was a holy land. That feeling of achievement and honor of being able to win the first place in this place could not be described. The match began, and Dan Yujing stubbornly did not choose to forfeit, but rather to battle with her full prowess. Under her leadership, the team of 10 from Blue Flame City unleashed a gorgeous offensive, but against Ling Han, it was not of much use, as he easily suppressed it without much difficulty. This final round was possibly the battle that had the widest gap in power between the two sides in history. In merely the time for a few breaths, the battle had concluded. And as expected, Changsun Liang stood up. He was going to bestow the prize on the winning team in person. Humph. A figure suddenly shot out, his whole body completely enshrouded in regulations, and entwined by great Tao. Sect Master. A great many powerful figures exclaimed in shock, and all those in severing Mundane tier knelt. This was the sect master of Black Moon sect, a heaven soul elite. Yet the sect master of the Black Moon sect did not look like he had any intention of paying them any regard at all. He raised his head and looked at the skies, his expression solemn. Everyone couldn't help but raise their heads and look at the skies as well. Right until at least an hour's time had passed, a massive starship appeared in the skies, casting a giant shadow on the ground. At the helm, a flag with 7 stars was raised. Hundred Magnificence City, someone immediately gasped. Hundred Magnificence City, a 2-star city, was similarly under the rule of the Fu clan. However, the territories of Black Moon City and Hundred Magnificence City just happened to border on each other. Thus, it was inevitable that there would be some conflicts between the two forces, and they were considerably intense at that. Hundred Magnificence City was grasped in the hands of the Shao clan. This was a clan-type force, unlike the Black Moon sect. And now, the 100 Magnificent City had suddenly sent out such a starship here. Was this a sign that there would be a massive war coming? Xiao, two figures descended, and the one in the lead was an elder. He was similarly wrapped all over with the brilliance of great Tao, and he held a young man in his right hand. When they landed on the ground, he finally released the young man. The elder chuckled, and said, "Brother Tai, what need is there to be so aggressive?" "Old geezer Dong, what have you come for?" the sect master of the Black Moon sect asked coldly. "Oh, a boy that's not too bad emerged in our Shao clan, and has never met anyone that could match him. I heard that the holy son of your sect is not too weak either, so I brought him here to ask for some guidance," the elder replied smilingly. His name was Shao Dong, a super powerhouse of the Shao Dong and a Heaven Soul elite. The young man beside him clasped his hands, and said, "This junior is Shao Sheng." "Greetings, milord." Though their visitor had ill intentions, the sect master of the Black Moon sect naturally wouldn't show his displeasure to a junior when his seniors were there. He nodded, and said, "Young man, you want to challenge Changsun Liang? It is just a spar, so please allow it, milord," Shao Sheng continued, a smile appearing on his lips, bringing a slight hint of mockery. Changsun Liang had been renowned for many years, and it was assured that the Shao clan was unaware just how strong he was, but now they actually dared charge right to their doorstep, and it was definitely not to seek their own humiliation. But the problem here was that Changsun Liang was already a super genius that would not appear in millions and millions of years. Could Shao Sheng be stronger than even him? It could not be imagined. Perhaps this Shao Sheng is really very strong, but it is absolutely impossible that he could reach the heights of the Holy Sun. That's right. As long as he manages to endure a few moves from the Holy Sun, he would naturally become famous. How cunning, actually planning to use this kind of method to quickly build up a reputation. Humph, do they think that it is easy to last a few moves when fighting the Holy Sun? The best scenario is for the Holy Sun to defeat him with a single move, and let's see who would dare come again in future. Everyone was discussing spiritedly in soft whispers. Shao Dong was a Heaven Soul elite, who would dare exclaim loudly in front of him? Oh. The sect master of the Black Moon sect showed a hint of a smirk. Clearly, he, too, thought that they only wanted to use Changsun Liang to increase their own fame. He turned to look at Changsun Liang, and said, "Lianger, come and have a spar with this little friend, then." "Yes, sect master," Changsun Liang agreed respectfully, and then strode out. Shao Sheng also took a few steps forwards, facing Changsun Liang directly. Circumstances do not look too good. Ling Han's expression was grim. He was not as optimistic as all the others. He could vaguely sense that this Shao Sheng was extremely strong, and definitely in no way inferior to Changsun Liang. He couldn't really say why that was, it was just an instinctive feeling. If Changsun Liang was in his best condition, then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But the issue here was that Changsun Liang's spirit had been wounded, and he would not be able to use his full battle prowess. Then, that would be dangerous. Yet the Empress did not take it to heart. The only person she cared about was Ling Han. Putting aside the fact that Changsun Liang would lose, even if he was beaten to death right in front of her, it would not move her in the slightest. However, since Ling Han cared, she, too, cast a few looks at Shao Sheng, nodded, and said, "This person is indeed not inferior to Changsun Liang, and with Changsun Liang's present state, there is no way he would be a match for him." She was not the type to beat around the bush with her words, speaking frankly whatever she thought. Ling Han frowned, but this battle was already inevitable, because this was not only a battle to show who was stronger between Changsun Liang and Shao Sheng, but was also the clash between two great forces which might perhaps decide the standing of the two forces in future. Because these two people would become leading figures in their respective forces. Whoever lost the battle, it would lead to a lasting influence on their own force. Chapter 1711, Another King Tier. The great battle could happen at any moment. Changsun Liang calmly stated, "I have cultivated a few more years than you have, so I will let you have the first 3 moves. Then I'll thank you for that." Xiaochen bared his teeth in a grin, showing a faint hint of mockery. You can act proud only at this moment. After I defeat you, you will only be able to weep. Liang stood, his arms crossed behind his back. He had absolute confidence in himself. After all, there were not many prodigies that were the likes of Ling and the Empress. Even if there were, they should not appear in large numbers in a 2-star force either. Xiaochen did not rush to attack. Instead, he stared fixedly at Liang as he released his aura. He was really very strong. A red-colored aura surged out from within his body, turning into something akin to an ocean with patterns of great Tao rippling within. And this was still just aura. It was practically a sea of regulations, a sea of fire. Liang's expression immediately became serious. This was a strong enemy, and definitely could not be underestimated. He was definitely not inferior to Ling Han. He, too, channeled his origin power to the fullest, his whole person suddenly seeming like a sharp sword that had just been unsheathed, exuding a forceful, cold sharpness that was breathtaking. Piercing wind. Xiaochen flicked a finger, and a powerful gale suddenly whipped out towards Liang. Liang stretched out a hand and pressed down, meeting the incoming attack. Pung! He had sealed off this strong gale, but it immediately exploded in his palm, turning into surging flames. Creak! Liang was sent backwards 3 steps by this blow. Duh. Blood was dripping from the palm of his hand, and his expression was grim. Hiss! Everyone erupted in uproar. In this exchange, Liang actually was at a small disadvantage. They had initially thought that Xiaochen wanted to use Liang to make himself famous, and this was indeed true. Xiaochen definitely was using Liang as a stepping stone. However, his ambition was much greater than that. He had not come to exchange a few blows with the latter, proving his own strength. Instead, he had come to defeat Liang. Defeating a young king tier that had been renowned for a long time would naturally grant him overnight success, and he would be able to replace Liang as the top in the Genesis tier. All of Liang's previous efforts would be equivalent to having been paving the way for him. He only needed to defeat Liang once, and he would be able to reap the fruits of all his prestige and honor. Brother Changsun, as it turned out, your strength is actually so low. Xiaochen pretended to be baffled. He shook his head. I'm really sorry about that. I thought you were very strong, so I used my full strength. I never thought that it would wound you. He put on a serious face, and said, in the next move, I will definitely not try so hard. This was undisguised mockery. Liang did not get angry. The battle between 2 king tiers was naturally not decided through chit-chat, but through pure strength. His strength was not inferior to the other parties. However, he had firstly underestimated his opponent, and had not thought that Xiaocheng's offensive would be so frightening, and secondly, he was limited by his previous promise. Otherwise, after his opponent had delivered a powerful move, he could take advantage of the opening and counterattack, and it would definitely be able to cause some slight injury to Xiaochen as well. 3 moves, this was the trap that Liang had laid out for himself. For a king tier like himself, the words that came out of his mouth were as good as gold, so how could he go back on his word? Xiaochen again began building up power for a strong move. He did not feel the slightest shame in making use of this loophole. In any case, a victory was a victory, so what need was there to be concerned about the means that he had used to gain his win? A few breaths later, he finally made his move, and as his figure pounced out, fiery flames were entwined around his fist as he hurled a punch at Liang. As the punch flew out, the whole sky was filled with flames, as if a shower of flames was raining down on them. The sect master of the Black Moon sect stretched out a hand, and this shower of flames was suddenly limited to a specific area to prevent those outside the battle zone from being injured as well. Meanwhile, Xiao Dong showed a hint of ridicule in his expression. His purpose here today was to crash their gathering. What Liang, a prodigy that could only appear once in millions and millions of years? Their Shao clan also had one, and one that was more outstanding at that. Changsun Liang shouted, and set out a defensive shield around him. Limited by his promise, he had to let his opponent have the first 3 moves. Thus, he could only defend and dodge, but could not take the offensive, which caused himself to be trapped in an absolutely disadvantageous situation. Xiaochen laughed loudly, his punch arriving. His fist had actually turned into a large mouth of roaring flames which bit towards Changsun Liang. Pung! Changsun Liang's figure streaked back from the flames, multiple cracks appearing in the shield around him, and then crumbling and collapsing with a bang. How could he possibly block the attack of a king tier that was his equal just by staying on the defensive? The best solution was to answer an attack with an attack of his own. Changsun Liang's expression was grim. Though he had blocked 2 blows, the situation was extremely unfavorable. His blood was surging in his body, and a mouthful of blood was close to being spat out of his mouth. He still had to take 1 more blow. "Brother Changsun, are you all right?" Xiaoxing's expression was filled with concern, but his eyes were filled with sneering derision. He had done it on purpose. "If you're not happy about it, come here and beat me up." AI, rumors are really deadly. So Brother Changsun is not all that strong, after all, and I had been expectant for nothing, mistakenly thinking that I could finally find a worthy opponent. I did not think that you would be so weak to be unable to withstand a few strikes from me. He continued to disparage Changsun Liang like mad. Changsun Liang was indifferent. His composure control was definitely well practiced. As long as the other's mouth was not poisonous to the extent that Ling Han had been, he would not take it to heart at all. If Ling Han had known his thoughts, should he feel pride, or would he be grimacing? "Skip the nonsense," Changsun Liang stated calmly. He turned his fury into fighting spirit. He only had to survive 1 more move, and he would definitely be able to launch an aggressive counterattack, making the other aware what the words Changsun Liang meant. A king tier that was invincible among his peers, how could that possibly have been a mere boast? Xiaoxing scoffed, and retorted, "Then take the 3rd move from me." He began building up power for another strong move again. This time, flames were surging out of his body, turning into a fiery beast. Then, the flames flickered, and a 2nd beast appeared. A 3rd, a 4th, a 5th. He seemed to have turned into a cave of flames, with innumerable flaming beasts appearing out of him. Each and every one of them was formed from patterns of great Tao that had taken the shape of flames. If one touched them, that would be equivalent to confronting the regulations of fire head-on. Stampede of 10,000 beasts. Xiaoxing laughed loudly, and pointed at Changsun Liang. "Go!" Boom! These beasts of fire suddenly charged towards Changsun Liang. They clearly were only manifestations of regulations, yet created a thunderous commotion as they stampeded, like there was an army charging out. Changsun Liang humphed, and launched multiple punches at these beasts of fire. He did not dare directly confront these beasts of the regulations of fire with his bare fists, but had rather wrapped golden light around his fists, and it was similarly rippling with patterns of great Tao as if liquid gold. "Brother Changsun, could it be that you don't know that fire can overcome gold?" Xiaoxing laughed from a distance. He did not follow with the offensive. Otherwise, it would be considered as a 4th move, and Changsun Liang would be able to launch an aggressive counter back at him. But if he did not move, then the 3rd move was not completed, and Changsun Liang would still be unable to counterattack. He, too, wanted to use this chance to settle his origin power. After all, releasing the stampede of 10,000 beasts was also quite exhaustive on him. It could be said that he had really used his advantage of 3 moves to its fullest. Changsun Liang continued to launch a barrage of blows as he frowned deeply. He naturally knew that fire could overcome gold, but as long as his strength surpassed his opponent completely, he could ignore this kind of natural trait. Of course, if it was like throwing a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, then it would definitely be the water that would be instantly evaporated by the flames. He was undoubtedly a king tier of the younger generation, and his strength could overwhelm all his opponents, so there naturally was no need to be concerned about elements that would overcome or strengthen one another. However, Xiaoxing's strength was truly not inferior to his, and this caused him to be stuck in unfavorable circumstances. Chapter 17:12, Changsun Liang defeated, Ling Han's up. In a battle of elites, any minute factor could possibly influence the final outcome of their battle. Fire subdued gold, and in this kind of battle of king tiers, this was really too fatal. Boom! When the 10,000 beasts had all surged past, Changsun Liang had also been blasted back more than 90 meters, with a few charred spots on his clothes, though most of it was still undamaged. This was because he wore a treasured robe that possessed astonishing defenses. But it was not a pseudo-celestial tool, after all, so it could not possibly defend completely against the most powerful strike from a Genesis tier, and Changsun Liang still looked battered and exhausted. And this was because he was Changsun Liang. If it was another Genesis tier, then even if he was wearing 10 treasured robes, he would only be burnt into ash in an instant. Changsun Liang panted heavily, a sliver of blood at the corner of his lips. He could only defend and could not fight back, yet he still managed to take 3 powerful moves from an elite that was his equal head-on. Unless he had as freakish a physique as Ling Han had, it was absolutely impossible that he would be completely unwounded. His eyes became very harsh. Even in that battle of peak stage king tiers between Ling Han previously, he had never cut such a sorry figure. It was not because Xiaoxing was stronger than Ling Han, but rather because the former had shamelessly made use of his promise. This was a king tier, but more than that, he was also an ambitious and ruthless character. As long as he achieved his purpose, he would use all means, fair or foul. Pa, pa, pa. Xiaoxing broke out in applause, and smilingly said, I have to admit that Brother Changsun does indeed have some strength. I initially thought that you would not be able to take 3 moves from me at all, but the truth has really given me a shock. Hearing these words, everyone in the area was furious. If the Lord Holy Sun had not promised to let you have the first 3 moves, how could he possibly have fallen into such a disadvantageous situation? But everyone could not help but admit that Xiaoxing was indeed very strong. Otherwise, even if Changsun Liang had allowed him the first 3 moves, the situation would not have become like this. However, Brother Changsun, you have sat long enough on the position of the top elite of the younger generation, so it's about time you gave someone else a turn. Xiaoxing laughed and struck out. He had already recovered to his prime condition, but Changsun Liang was injured, and he planned to use this opportunity to defeat the latter with a single move. The battle of the 2 young king tiers was also the competition of the 2 great forces of the Black Moon sect and the Shao clan. Whoever won this clash would gain a major advantage. Changsun Liang was naturally aware of this as well. He forcibly suppressed his injuries, and began fighting with his opponent. At this moment, Changsun Liang's strength could clearly be seen. Even if he had been injured, his battle prowess was still incredibly violent, and he was clashing with Xiaoxing without showing any sign of weakness, showing that his reputation as a king tier had definitely not come casually. However, Ling Han frowned. Not good, this was extremely not good. Changsun Liang had initially suffered a spiritual wound, and now he had been blasted with 3 powerful moves successively, so his battle prowess should have dropped drastically. Yet his battle prowess had returned to its peak state at this moment. What was the reason for that? He had to have used some kind of secret technique to forcibly suppress his injuries. If Changsun Liang was unable to defeat Xiaoxing in a short time, then once the effects of the secret technique had passed, not only would he be forced back to where he started, his injuries would also in fact become heavier, and his condition would be even worse. How could he use such a secret technique without paying some kind of price? Ling Han could see this, so how could the powerful figures of the Black Moon sect not? They all showed expressions of anxiety. If Changsun Liang could show his impressive might, and defeat Xiaoxing in a few moves, there naturally would not be any problem. But Xiaoxing was really too strong, completely not inferior to Changsun Liang at all. Even if the 2 of them had fought in their best condition, it would be hard to determine who would emerge victorious, and now, to want to decide the battle in just a few moves? Even if Changsun Liang used a powerful method that meant throwing his life on the line, how could it be that his opponent would definitely take it head-on? This was terrible. Meanwhile, Xiao Dong was smiling slightly as he stroked his beard. He and their Xiao clan had waited too long for this day to come. Previously, the Black Moon sect had already produced a king tier, causing a few two-star forces around them to feel uneasy. Though they were all under the reign of the Fu clan, the Fu clan had never made it a law that they had to maintain peaceful relations among themselves. In the celestial realm, battle was the main theme that would never change. Once Changsun Liang matured, putting aside the possibility of reaching the immortal palace tier, with his talent as a king tier, there should be no problem for him to defeat dividing soul tiers. By then, the Xiao clan would be in a dangerous position. Thankfully, they had also produced a Xiao Sheng. At present, Xiao Sheng was not 20,000 years old yet. After showing such strong natural talent, he had been nurtured by the Xiao clan in secret, right until he had reached the peak stage of the Genesis tier. Only then had he appeared in the public eye, and his first battle was against Changsun Liang. Xiao Sheng was a rookie, so there was no pressure on him. If he lost, it was completely normal, but if he won, he would be able to replace Changsun Liang and become the strongest prodigy of this current generation. The Xiao clan would be emerging aggressively as a powerful force. Xiao Dong laughed madly in his thoughts. What Black Moon sect? Tui. Changsun Liang pushed his battle prowess to its limits, but there would be a time when one's power was used up. He had been wounded in the first place, and suppressing his injuries forcefully to continue the battle was already his utmost, so how could he manage to further increase his battle prowess on this kind of basis? Impossible. The more he fought, the worse his situation became. He was already being suppressed by Xiao Sheng, and practically had lost all ability to counter. Finally, he spat out a mouthful of blood. That was the secret technique having exceeded its time limit, and he could no longer control his injuries. Pooh! Xiao Sheng threw out a punch, and a flaming blade burst out from his fist, stabbing deeply into Changsun Liang's right shoulder, and passing all the way through. This was a manifestation of regulations, being filled with destructive power, and immediately caused Changsun Liang to be in unbearable agony. The sect master of the Black Moon sect gripped his hands into tight fists. However, Xiao Dong had not done anything lethal, and Xiao Dong was right there beside him, so he forcibly suppressed his urge to make a move. The battle was already lost, and he could not afford to lose his pride at the same time. Ha ha ha, this is the so-called top elite of the young generation? Xiao Sheng flicked up Changsun Liang with his fiery blade, his face filled with disdain. Don't make me laugh, he's not all that stronger than a piece of trash. From today onwards, I am the true top elite of the young generation, the only king tier. With a toss, Changsun Liang was thrown out. He smiled proudly, showing his wild nature, and was incredibly arrogant. Changsun Liang, when you see me in future, remember to take a different path. Otherwise, I will thrash you every single time I see you, and beat you into submission. He slanted a sideways look at the people around him, his expression filled with arrogance and is just simply asking for a beating. What is it? Not happy about it? Anyone who is dissatisfied can come in for a battle. As long as it is Genesis tier, as many of you can come. Everyone was extremely infuriated, but faced with this kind of elite, the advantage of numbers was meaningless. Furthermore, even if they had really defeated him with thousands or tens of thousands of them, what meaning would there be to it? It would only be a joke to others. Ling quickly stepped out, catching hold of Changsun Liang. He nodded, and said, "Rest assured, just leave the rest to me." Changsun Liang grabbed hold of Ling wrist, and spat out a mouthful of blood first. Then, he said, "Be careful, that person's strength is definitely not inferior to mine." Ling broke into a grin, and said, "Brother Changsun, don't tell me that you have not discovered that I have broken through?" Fuck, he really had. Changsun Liang was instantly dumbfounded. Because Ling was too strong, others would subconsciously overlook his cultivation level. And now he suddenly realized that Ling Han had managed to fight him to a tie when he had only been a great saint. Then, now that this guy had advanced into Saint King tier, how strong would he now have become? He was definitely at a freakishly strong level. Chapter 1713, Kicked Around Like a Ball. Everyone felt very repressed and furious. Though not everyone here was a disciple of the Black Moon sect, whether it was Dark Moon City or Double Extreme City, they were all under the administration of Black Moon City. If the Black Moon sect was insulted, how could they possibly feel proud? Furthermore, Xiaochen was indeed too despicable. Firstly, he had not won in an honorable manner, but had rather made use of the limit of 3 moves that Changsun Liang had promised. Secondly, Changsun Liang had been injured in the first place, so how could defeating a king tier that was not in his best condition count? Anyone could step out and give this arrogant guy a beating. But even Changsun Liang could only fight Xiaochen to a tie in his prime condition, so was there anyone else that could give him a harsh thrashing? Ha 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 ha, brother Tai, looks like this holy son of your sect has not cultivated enough. Xiao Dong laughed loudly, adding fuel to the fire without the slightest mercy. He broke into a cold smirk. That last blow that Xiaochen had followed up with was really too brilliant, having directly wounded Changsun Liang severely. With that, it was highly possible that he would have to recuperate his injuries for 2 to 3 years, and would definitely miss the opening of the Severing Mundane pool. For a prodigy like him, he would definitely choose to advance into celestial level at the Severing Mundane pool, and once he missed that opportunity, that would mean waiting another 10 million years. Which also meant that Xiaochen could gain a lead of 10 million years over him. Even in the celestial realm, this was also a very long time, enough for Xiaochen to become an elite in the consummate level of dividing soul tier first, and raise the Black Moon sect to the ground. The sect master of the Black Moon sect wore a livid expression. However, because his whole body was entwined with regulations, no one could see his current expression clearly. Since no one from your sect is going to fight, I will take my leave first. Xiao Dong beckoned Xiaochen over. Now that they had finished their display of superior might, it was time for them to leave. Wait! Just at this moment, a soft exclamation rang out. A young man slowly and casually walked out, his face bearing a faint smile. I will take up the challenge. It was Ling Han. Looking at the stage, everyone showed an expression of excitement. Previously, they had already heard that Ling Han had battled with Changsun Liang before, and their battle had ended in a stalemate. Furthermore, the fact that Changsun Liang had been injured was also because of his previous spar with Ling Han. They had never thought that things would be so coincidental, and they would encounter another super genius today. However, since Ling Han had shared the limelight in the previous battle with Changsun Liang, then with Changsun Liang having sustained injury, Ling Han should not be exempted either. This battle was still very dangerous. You? Xiaochen cast a look at Ling Han, and showed a hint of disdain in his expression. Who do you think you are? Are you even worthy of challenging me? He had defeated Changsun Liang, and had already become the new ruler of the young generation. How could any random person just challenge him? If any random person could challenge him as they liked, then wouldn't he die of exhaustion? Ling Han did not get angry. In any case, he just had to beat him as hard as he could later. He smiled, and said, previously, wasn't it you who said that anyone who is dissatisfied can challenge you, and there is no limit on numbers either? Oh, aside from you, who else is dissatisfied? Xiaochen asked coldly. Ling Han turned around, and asked the Empress, wife, are you satisfied? Dissatisfied, the Empress spoke up, her tone filled with assertiveness. Even if it was not to give face to Ling Han, the Empress would also feel dissatisfied. She was prouder than anyone else. You see, the two of us are dissatisfied, so how about we beat you up together? Ling Han was all smiles, as if he was saying something like let's have a meal together today, appearing to be very casual. A fury immediately surged up in Xiaochen. Why was this guy so detestable? It was only a few words, and he was already infuriated to the extreme. He swept an eye over the Empress, and this rage rapidly disappeared into thin air. Such elegant bearing, how captivating. He immediately decided, even if he had to snatch, he would have to bring this woman back to Hundred Magnificent City. With such thoughts, he said, "All right, then the two of you can fight me together." Ling Han snickered, and slowly circled around to stand behind Xiaochen. In this way, he, Xiaochen, and the Empress would be the 3 points of a triangle. He laughed, and said, "Wife, let's kick this guy around like a ball." "All right." The Empress nodded. Though her philosophy was much simpler, preferring directly killing whoever made her unhappy, since Ling Han wanted to play around, she would also be happy to oblige him. Xiaoxing's expression involuntarily became very ugly. Just how far did the two of them look down on him? Actually wanting to trap him in between the two of them and kick him around like a ball? Was this combining their forces against him? Absolutely not. It was just you kicking it over, and I kick it back. There was practically no difference from a one-on-one duel. For those that had reached heights like they had, they actually did not fear having to fight a few battles in succession. Their origin power was like an ocean, and their vitality was vibrant, so even if they had to fight for a few decades, they would not feel exhaustion. What a despicable mouth. Let's see if I won't rip it apart. He flew into a thunderous rage, and immediately leaped out, charging out towards Ling Han. "Wife, catch the ball." Seeing that Xiaoxing had reached him, Ling Han threw out a punch. Peng, without a doubt, Xiaoxing was sent flying by his fist. With Ling Han's present strength, even if the Empress and Changsun Liang joined forces, they were no match for him, so what was merely Xiaoxing worth all by himself? The sect master of the Black Moon sect. Xiao Dong. Changsun Liang. All the spectators. Fuck. This. Had their eyes blurred? Xiaoxing was actually sent flying with such a casual punch. It could be confirmed that this blow from Ling Han had definitely not made use of any kind of celestial technique. There were no patterns of great Tao, and there was no light of regulations. If this was a celestial technique, then it was definitely one that had never been seen before. It was just a very simple, ordinary punch, and Xiaoxing had flown off just like that. Who could have imagined this? Who would believe it? Had Changsun Liang really fought him to a tie? Hiss, could it be that it was not Xiaoxing that was strong, but rather Changsun Liang's injuries were too severe, and Xiaoxing had taken advantage of his weakness today? Otherwise, it would mean that Ling Han had not used his full strength at that time at all. Those who were the most in disbelief were the people from Dark Moon City. They knew that Ling Han was very strong, but it was only just now that they had found out that Ling Han actually managed to battle Changsun Liang to a tie. But looking at Ling Han's show of power now, they were directly dumbfounded. Was this really human? Xiaoxing streaked through the air, flying directly at the Empress. Though Xiaoxing had been dazed by that punch, a king tier was still a king tier, after all. Seeing how a person had suddenly appeared in front of him, he immediately threw out a punch first, wanting to take the initiative. The Empress moved, and her slender, fair hand was a beautiful sight to behold, but the power of her palm strike was incredibly deep and resounding. As she delivered a palm strike, endless patterns of great Tao were compressed, practically enough to scare anyone to death. Peng, 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 peng. Xiaoxing and the Empress engaged in a fierce exchange, and his strength was visible from this as well. He actually managed to block more than 30 moves from the Empress, and only then was he sent flying with a palm strike from the Empress, crashing back towards Ling Han again. "You guys are really treating me like a ball." Xiaoxing was furious. With a loud shout, taking advantage of the fact that he was still in mid-air, he used the blade of flame. This was one of his strongest attacks. If one was slashed once by the flaming blade, he would suffer a Tao injury, and it was extremely fatal. Ling Han smiled, and stretched out his hand to grab the flaming blade. At first, Xiaoxing had wanted to stab him with the fiery blade, but when he saw that Ling Han had stretched out a hand to grab at his blade, he naturally would not dodge either. Thus, Ling Han's hand steadily and firmly grabbed the fiery blade. Not good. Changsun Liang involuntarily paled. It was because he had taken a strike from this fiery blade of Xiaosheng at the end, causing shards of the regulations of fire to fill his entire body, and merge into one inside his body. They were very difficult to expel. Chapter 1714, My name is Ding Xiaochen. Having sustained such injuries, even if a severing mundane tier or dividing soul tier elite stepped out, it would be very hard to deal with it, because this had already fused with his body, and if things were done forcefully, it would cause frightening damage to the physical body. Ling Han's using his bare hand to grab the fiery blade would merely be seeking his own suffering. You can't underestimate Xiaosheng just because your first strike succeeded. This man was a genuine king tier, with indomitable strength. Changsun Liang was still thinking when he saw that after Ling Han had grabbed the flaming blade, he immediately sent out a flying kick that landed on Xiaosheng's chest. Peng, this guy was again sent flying, and crashed back towards the Empress. This. Changsun Liang gaped, extremely speechless. He had seen clearly. Ling Han's hand was completely unscathed, and not even a single small charred spot was to be seen. Fuck, this is too freakish. Strange, his action was clearly not very fast, and I could distinctly see him move, but why was Xiaosheng caught off guard like that? Putting aside any sort of defense, he couldn't even manage to stretch out his arm to block the blow. That's right, even if it had been me, I wouldn't have been like that. He must have been scared off by Ling Han's aura as a king tier, and lost all power of resistance. And that must be the case. Everyone could not understand what they had seen, and thought that they had found a logical explanation. However, those elites above the severing mundane tier had a different opinion. A seemingly light touch is actually heavy, a seemingly slow action is actually quick. These powerful figures all bore stunned expressions, their hearts throbbing wildly at Ling Han's strength. Though every single move that Ling Han made could be seen incredibly clearly, as if anyone could easily block him, it was another issue whether they actually could manage to do so. However, in truth, unless Xiaosheng's reaction speed and speed of attack could speed up another 10 times, it would be completely impossible for him to block Ling Han's blows. Ling Han's movement was too fast, as if it was lightning. One could see how a lightning bolt descended incredibly clearly, but if you had seen lightning, and still wanted to stretch out your hand to block it, how could that possibly be done? But practically no one could attain such a level, not even any of these powerful figures could do so. If they made a move now, they would definitely be even faster than Ling Han, but in terms of a battle of equals, being able to force their opponent to watch helplessly, unable to even stretch out a hand in an attempt at defense, was merely something delusional. It had to be known that Xiaosheng was already a true king tier, and only an equal could match his battle prowess in this world. How could anyone possibly overwhelm him? This young man was going to defy the heavens. Peng, 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 peng. After being sent flying over to the Empress's side, Xiaosheng would be able to counter at least, and was only defeated after exchanging a few dozen moves with the Empress. He was again sent flying. Yet when he had reached Ling Han's side, he really could only suffer being beaten. Whether Ling Han was punching him with a fist, striking him with a palm, or kicking him with a foot, he would be sent flying with a single strike. The gap in their power was clear with one look. Everyone could feel their hair stand on ends. Changsun Liang and Xiaosheng were already prodigies of the highest grade, but now another two had actually appeared, and they were completely superior to Xiaosheng. 2. Hiss, my gods. The sect master of the Black Moon sect broke into a smile. Though Changsun Liang had indeed been injured heavily, Xiaosheng presently was even worse off now. He was hit back and forth like a ball, sustaining both injury and humiliation. Xiao Dong's expression had naturally changed completely. His eyes were shooting fire. He had never thought that the situation would take such a sudden turn like this. Xiaosheng had actually been defeated, and it was not a narrow loss, but a complete defeat, being defeated by two people at the same time. How could it be so? He couldn't help but want to interfere. 3 such young king tiers had actually appeared in the Black Moon sect. If they were given a few billion years' time, who would be able to match them among 2 star forces? Ho ho, old man Dong, what are you planning on doing? The sect master of the Black Moon sect said, all smiles, though he had sealed off any possible attempt for Xiao Dong to make a move. If the latter made any sort of move, then the attack would only be directed at him. The 2 of them had exchanged blows many times, so the sect master of the Black Moon sect naturally had no fear of him. Xiao Dong looked coldly at the sect master of the Black Moon sect, and suppressed his urge to make a move. Since Xiao Dong had not admitted defeat, it would not be appropriate for him to call a halt to the battle either. But was this really a battle? Perhaps the exchange between the Empress and Xiao Sheng could still be considered a battle, but the exchange between Ling Han and Xiao Sheng was definitely not one. That could only be called a one-sided beating. By now, Xiao Sheng didn't know how many punches and kicks he had endured from Ling Han, his whole figure dejected and depressed. I don't want to play anymore, the Empress said to Ling Han. Her patience had never been the best, and she would usually eliminate directly whomever she disliked. Ling Han nodded. His wife was tired, so they should stop playing. He stretched out a hand, and grabbed Xiao Sheng. With a smile, he said, young man, you have to learn humility in future. See, I am so strong yet I am not proud or arrogant, so what are you worth? These words rendered everyone speechless. The 2 of you had been kicking him around like a ball, so how much prouder could you be? But when they recalled how arrogant Xiao Sheng had previously been, everyone felt that their anger had been vented. This kind of character needed to be taught a good lesson. This felt incredible. With a casual toss, Xiao Sheng created a slight groove on the ground, sliding until he finally stopped at the side of Xiao Dong's feet. This was practically a provocation. Ling Han actually did not want to casually become enemies with a dividing soul tier elite, but with him having thrashed Xiao Sheng publicly and in such a humiliating manner like this, the feud between him and the Xiao clan was confirmed, so what need was there for him to be reserved any longer? Xiao Dong picked Xiao Sheng up, though he wanted nothing more than to slap the latter. They had anticipated great results for tens of thousands of years, and had just barely enjoyed the taste of victory when they were forced back where they had started. But no matter what, Xiao Sheng was still the most outstanding descendant of the Xiao clan, and had boundless prospects. Furthermore, this was not entirely Xiao Sheng's fault either, but rather that Ling Han and his wife were too overwhelmingly strong. Young man, what is your name? Xiao Dong spoke up, his tone very even. For a character like him who had lived for who knew how many millions and millions of years, he naturally knew very well to restrain his killing intent. Ling Han smiled slightly, and answered, my surname is Ding, and my given name is Xiaochen. Pooh! Ding Xiaochen had just been watching with envy from the sidelines, and when he heard these words, he almost spluttered out a mouthful of blood. You can't screw me over like this. Indeed, he very much wanted to become well known, and become the strongest in the younger generation, but did not want to do so via such a means. Why did he feel that this method was a little familiar and a little bit like a trap? In the past, the Han clan had charged to their doorstep, and said that someone from their Ding clan had been insolent, destroying the physical body of a prodigy from their Han clan. But the Ding clan had forbade any of their clansmen from entering into the ancient realm after Ding Xiaochen's incident. Moreover, the Ding clan did not have the ability to send a Genesis tier into the ancient realm. This would require at least a dividing soul tier elite. Could it be that that matter was connected to Ling Han? Impossible, impossible, Ding Xiaochen immediately shook his head. He must have thought too much. He hurriedly called out, Senior, this junior is the real Ding Xiaochen. That person is named Ling Han, so please don't fall into his trap and be deceived, Senior. He had no wish to become the target of a dividing soul tier elite. That would really be grumbling that he wasn't dying fast enough. Hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but show expressions of disdain. It was presently the battle between the Black Moon sect and the Xiao clan, so how could you weaken the morale of your own side? And calling out, Senior, in such a boot-licking way at that, Tui. But to Ding Xiaochen, this was also the attitude that he should take. Otherwise, was he supposed to call out, "Old geezer," or "Old fart"? Chapter 17:15, Recruitment. Only now did Xiao Dong realize that he had been tricked by Ling Han, and his face involuntarily darkened. He did not even know how he was supposed to describe Ling Han. The latter had deliberately misreported his identity, obviously not wanting to become a target of the Xiao clan. This was a display of weakness. But just how outrageously brazen was he to publicly deceive a dividing soul tier elite? "Humph, you actually dare to trick me." He glared at Ling Han. Instantly, 2 iron swords leaped out of his eyes, slashing out towards Ling Han at an incredibly fast speed. This was the overwhelming advantage of 2 major tiers. What more when the gap between celestial level and immortal level was as wide as the gap between heaven and earth? How was Ling Han supposed to block this? The sect master of the Black Moon sect moved. He had long since been prepared. Stretching out a hand, he crushed these 2 iron swords. He laughed and said, "Old geezer Dong, you are really getting more childish the more you age. To actually fall down to the level of a junior. You can't allow juniors their mischief and to play around?" Xiao Dong's expression was extremely ugly. He stared coldly at the sect master of the Black Moon sect, but this was the territory of another. He had already moved once, and if he made another move, the sect master of the Black Moon sect would probably fly into a rage. He had no wish to spark a full war between the Xiao clan and the Black Moon sect either, and thus said, "Fine, then we'll have these juniors battle once more in the severing mundane pool." After one had advanced into celestial level, no matter how wide their gap had been in the Genesis tier, it would shrink endlessly because the breach from immortal level to celestial level was really too huge. Furthermore, there was also variation in quality in the severing mundane tier. The more thoroughly one severed his mortal bonds, the stronger his strength would be after taking this crucial step. There was no need to be too bothered about the gain or loss of a Genesis tier. The true start of an elite was after they had advanced into the severing mundane tier. Holding Xiao Sheng, he leaped up, and already soared back to that vessel in the skies. Then, the ship turned around and left, returning to Hundred Magnificence City. Immediately, the whole area broke out in fiery cheers, all cheering for Ling Han and the Empress. They had won. Ling Han. Ling Han. Ling Han. Luan Xing. Luan Xing. Luan Xing. Their cries rang out, as if they would shake down even the stars in the skies. Ling Han smiled and clasped his hands in the direction of those around him. Meanwhile, the Empress was incredibly proud. She didn't bother to pay anyone any regard. "Brother Ling, you are really extraordinarily strong." After Changsun Liang had undergone emergency treatment, he was now mobile. However, his injuries had become worse, and the shards of fire regulations had also invaded his body, so he would need a very, very long time to recover to his prime condition. Even if he had the help of saintly medicine, it was still difficult. However, he was the holy son of the Black Moon sect. The severing mundane pool would open in another year or so, and the great elites of the sect would probably treat him at all costs. They definitely could not allow him to miss an opportunity like this, or that would mean waiting for another 10 million years. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Thankfully, I have not disappointed you. You have done far more than not disappointing me, you are practically astounding." Changsun Liang shook his head. "Now, even I feel my fighting spirit blaze, and highly anticipate the battle I will have with you after we enter into severing mundane tier. Otherwise, I will definitely not fight with you again. Just look at how Xiao Sheng was being hit around like a ball." It was fine to watch such a spectacle, but he had no desire to experience it personally. Ling Han smiled faintly. If he successfully entered into the severing mundane tier, that would be delivering a strike to the heaven and earth, which was much stronger than striking himself. Even now, Changsun Liang was no match for him. If he did not advance into celestial level via the strongest method when he entered into the severing mundane tier, then it was even more impossible that he could be a match for him. The competition ended, and Ling Han was busy collecting his winnings. Both he and the Empress had placed a wager of a total of over 1,000 star stones. Those were their full wealth, and now it had become 20,000, which could be considered an exorbitant sum. When the two of them returned to the relay station, they saw that their accommodations had completely become a sea of people. These people were all waiting for Ling Han and the Empress. Their display was too outstanding, so a great many forces wanted to recruit them. There were also a considerable number of people that wanted to befriend them. If they did not move now, the two of them would no longer be in their league. Ling Han was pestered beyond tolerance, and in the end he could only ask Celestial Clouds Island for help. With the red-haired young man as their escort, they went to the Celestial Clouds Island, and only then did they manage to gain a moment of peace. Only a day had passed, and Changsun Liang's condition had improved considerably. According to him, for heaven's soul elites of the sect had personally moved, not hesitating to even expend their own vitality in order to heal his injuries, and he had improved only with that. Going by the look of things, he would be able to recover fully in about half a year's time. Changsun Liang also extended an olive branch to Ling Han and the Empress, wanting to recruit them into the Black Moon sect. Though there was only one holy son, he could bestow the title of honored elders on them, and they would enjoy very good privileges. They were also the only ones who could become elders without having to break through to the severing mundane tier first. Ling Han refused tactfully. He had no wish to stay for a long time here. He only had to find out the exact whereabouts of the Rock Palace, and he would immediately set out. His wife, son, and parents were all waiting for him, so what time did he have to squander here? Changsun Liang did not force them. Ling Han and the Empress were too outstanding. Perhaps their future level was also higher than he could imagine. Ling Han and Changsun Liang made a promise to meet once more in another year and a half's time at the Severing Mundane Pool, and then the former returned to Dark Moon City with Long Gaofei. They spent another 2 months' time on the journey, and when they returned to Dark Moon City, they also brought back the news that they had won the first place in the martial arts competition. The whole city was in uproar. The last time Dark Moon City became champion was 3 eras ago. This position of champion naturally excited innumerable people. Everyone suddenly experienced a feeling of pride, and their cohesiveness increased greatly. Their sense of belonging to Dark Moon City also increased another level. The Duan clan and Long clan both energetically attempted to recruit Ling Han and the Empress. If they could obtain these two people, then it would not be an issue for their clan to soar. Furthermore, the Empress was clearly an integral whole with Ling Han. As long as Ling Han nodded, that would be equivalent to also gaining the alliance of the Empress. The best method naturally was an alliance through matrimony, yet Ling Han looked like he was not attracted by any feminine charms, causing both the Duan clan and Long clan to be at their wits' end. They had already sent out the most beautiful daughters of their clan, but they were not able to even enter the doors of Ling Han's residence. What mood did Ling Han have at present for flirting? He was presently studying the information about the Severing Mundane Pool. A year and a half later, he would enter into this place, and he would also be facing a competition of millions and millions of people by then. Severing one's mortal bonds had to be done in specific locations of the celestial realm, and this kind of location was usually incredibly dangerous. Thus, it was necessary to first understand the situation, or what would be severed would be his own life. In this place, even severing mundane tier ancestors could be killed, what more people like them who had yet to enter into celestial level. This danger was mainly reflected in the environment and the demonic beasts in the mystery realm. For example, there were caves that had strong absorption. If one was to be sucked in, it was never heard that they could actually come back out alive. Especially so for the Severing Mundane Pool. The power of heaven and earth there was the strongest, and was also the most dangerous. Every time, at least half the people who had entered into the Severing Mundane Pool had been killed in the mystery realm. Slightly less than half would be dying in the process of severing their mortal bonds afterwards, and the remaining few would just barely survive the ordeal and become severing mundane ancestors. This number would not exceed 100 every single time. Compared to the million that had entered, this ratio was pitifully low. And it was right at this moment that the Han clan came. Chapter 17:16, Play Big. The Han clan, a 3-star force and the overlord of 9 underworld city. In the past, the Han clan had once sent out a very outstanding junior for a training trip in the ancient realm. Firstly, if he could cultivate to the consummate level of the Genesis tier in the ancient realm, his battle prowess would far exceed his peers, and secondly, the ancient realm had treasures that were left behind by the celestial kings, so if he managed to get hold of these treasures, that would be fantastic. This junior was Han Chi. However, Han Chi encountered Ling Han, and for the sake of a void flower, the two of them battled. In the end, Ling Han destroyed Han Chi's physical body. If it were not for the fact that there was a technique that an elite of his clan had planted in his mind, protecting his spirit as it returned to the celestial realm, he would probably have died in shame in the ancient realm. At that time, Ling Han claimed that he came from the Ding clan of Dark Moon City, and thus, the Ding clan was out of luck. This was not just the matter of a junior having his physical body destroyed. The Han clan also suspected that Ling Han had obtained the celestial technique of Celestial King tier. Thus, a powerful figure soon came to the Ding clan, but no matter how hard he investigated, he did not discover any possibility for a member of the Ding clan to travel to the ancient realm. To send some beneath celestial level into the ancient realm would at least require strength on the level of dividing soul tier. Who would be capable of doing this in Dark Moon City? Thus, the Han clan flew into a rage, and then returned. On this matter, the Black Moon sect did not dare make any noise. The reason was very simple: how could a 2-star force challenge a 3-star force? Furthermore, there was no movement from the Fu clan either. Should they begin a war with the Han clan just for the mere sake of a puny Ding clan? That would be a real joke. Furthermore, the Han clan had indeed experienced a loss in this matter, so no matter what, they should be allowed to vent their anger, right? All in all the members of the Ding clan were depressed. This time, another person had come from the Han clan, and it was the victim, Han Chi. He wanted to personally identify that criminal. When Ling Han heard this, he involuntarily propped up his chin, and sank into deep thought. Could he use this chance to teach the Ding clan a lesson? Actually, Ling Han already planned to leave Dark Moon City. Firstly, it was already very close to the day that the Severing Mundane pool would open, and around half a year would still have to be spent on the journey. Actually, the true waiting period would only be about a year. Secondly, he had made too big a show at Black Moon City. Though there were a great many forces that wanted to recruit him, there were definitely some other forces that wanted to eliminate him. Who would be willing to let a king tier emerge from another force? Wouldn't that be waiting to be conquered in future? Especially when he had also harshly offended the Shao clan, this was a 2-star force. For example, if they send out a dividing soul tier elite, how was Ling Han supposed to block that? Even if the Ding clan, Long clan, and Duan clan joined forces, they would all be eliminated instantly even if they were only facing a Yin soul elite. Furthermore, it would already be a blessing if the Ding clan did not follow up with a subsequent strike of their own, and only watched the show from the sidelines. Of course, if Ling Han was willing to stay in Black Moon City, the Shao clan definitely would not dare invade. However, this was only a 1-star city, so what did the Shao clan have to fear? In any case, he was going to leave, so why not play big this time round? Ling Han broke into a grin. Then let's play around. At present, he had no burdens at all. Feng Peyun and the others had all stayed behind in the secondary city of Black Moon City. They had all accustomed themselves to the regulations of the celestial realm. As long as they did not voluntarily confess, who would be able to tell that they had come from the ancient realm? The Rain Emperor had already left on his long journey as well, stepping on the path of his own Tao. There was nothing that he had to worry about. Ling Han began to make his preparations, and after about a day, he suddenly sent out the news that he requested to join the Ding clan. This caused a great commotion among the 3 great clans. Who would have imagined that, with both the Long clan and Duan clan having set out what could be considered sky-high conditions, Ling Han did not agree to join either clan, but the Ding clan did not make any attempt to recruit him, yet Ling Han would actually approach them on his own volition. What was going on here? Did this guy have a trait of a masochist? The Ding clan also began a serious discussion regarding this matter. I think that we should still accept this boy. Could it be that you people have not heard of his martial success? He is an equal of the Holy Sun, a third Severance Grand Elder said. He was also one of the only 2/3 Severance Grand Elders of the Ding clan, and his name was Ding Xiaochen. Furthermore, he is also good friends with the Holy Sun. If we can make a connection like this, then the Ding clan would definitely become the top noble clan in Dark Moon City in a single leap. The other third Severance Grand Elder, Ding Song, shook his head, however, and said, "This damn brat is wily and cunning, and definitely bears no good intentions. Our Ding clan did not promise him any kind of benefits at all, so why does he want to join us?" This was something that everyone did not understand. Even if Ling Han wanted to join any force, it should not have been the Ding clan. Moreover, wasn't it better for him to join the Black Moon sect? He was good friends with Changsun Liang. I think that this boy's words are not to be trusted, Ding Hu said decisively. Though he had not seen Ling Han many times, the horrible impression that this boy had left on him was deeply imprinted. The members of the Ding clan were divided into two factions. Half of them agreed to have Ling Han join them. After all, this was a supreme king tier, and he also had a connection with the Holy Sun, but the other half determinately objected, thinking that Ling Han had no reason at all to join them, and there had to be a conspiracy at the bottom of this matter. This was indeed a conspiracy. However, even if the Ding clan thought so hard that their heads exploded from the effort, they would not know where this conspiracy would come from. After all, the information that both sides had hold of was not equal. Finally, everyone turned to look at Ding Xiaochen. He was the only fourth Severance Grand Elder of the clan, and was also their pillar of support. Ding Xiaochen stretched out a finger to tap lightly on the armrest. After a long while, he finally said, "Let Ling Han join the clan." He paused, and continued, "Whether or not he has some intention that cannot be revealed, once he enters into the Ding clan, everything would no longer be up to him to decide." Ancestor is brilliant. Whether they agreed or not, since Ding Xiaochen had already said thus, everyone could only nod their heads in agreement. However, thinking deeper about it, it was true. Once Ling Han joined the Ding clan, whether he was to be beaten or killed would all be up to the decision of the Ding clan. How could it be that dealing with a member of their own clan would still require approval from the Duan clan and Long clan? Even the Black Moon sect could not interfere in the internal matters of the Ding clan. This brat might be hiding some form or conspiracy, but once he entered into the Ding clan, then he would experience such torture that he would wish for death. Ding Hu also broke into a sinister expression. He could no longer wait to strangle Ling Han to death with his own hands, and there was that woman with a perfect figure as well. After he killed Ling Han, she would become his plaything. Very soon, the news spread out. The Ding clan accepted Ling Han's request, and agreed to have him join the Ding clan. They even expressed that they would bestow their surname on Ling Han to show their high regard for him. "See, we are all completely treating you like a family member." This was also a trap laid out by the Ding clan. To cultivators, a surname was extremely important, representing one's roots. And now having you change your surname was equivalent to giving you a slap. But the crux of the matter now was that Ling Han's present strength was too low. Thus, this move of the Ding clan did indeed seem like it was a reward for Ling Han. When Ling Han was informed, he couldn't help but smile, and told the messenger to return with a message of his own, saying that as long as he could join the Ding clan, he would change his surname to Ding. He was not worried at all, because it was absolutely impossible that he would join the Ding clan, so the matter of changing his surname naturally could not happen at all. "Ding clan, you people have never done any good deeds. This time, I will let you guys have some fun," Ling Han mumbled to himself, a smile curling up the corners of his lips. Anyone who was familiar with him would know that this guy had to have plans of wing someone over. Chapter 1717, Plan of Two Schemers. Hey, little Han, why do you look like you're about to do something bad? A voice suddenly said. Without turning around, Ling Han already knew that only one person could speak in such a contemptible tone. The large black dog. He smiled and said, "What? You've grown tired of playing around? Sigh, the people here are far too inhospitable to guests, and they're absolutely no fun to mess around with," the large black dog said with a sigh. He rested a paw on his chin, and his expression was one of exasperation. Ling Han could already imagine how many people had been screwed over by this detestable dog. "Oh, that's right, you were wearing such an evil smile just then. You're definitely up to no good. Hurry up and tell Grandpa Dog so I can also have some fun." There was a bright glimmer in the large black dog's eyes. He loved to screw people over. Ling Han's eyes darted around, and he said, "I've planned a spectacular show, and there just happens to be a position for you. Do you want it?" An alert expression instantly spread across the large black dog's face. He was the grandmaster of screwing people over, so he was naturally vigilant to getting screwed over as well. In fact, he always felt like others wanted to do evil toward him. "Brat, what do you want Grandpa Dog to do?" "I want you to bite someone and lead them to a certain place," Ling Han replied with a smile. Woof. The large black dog was infuriated, and he furiously lunged at Ling Han. "You can go and bite someone. Your entire family can go and bite someone." This detestable dog was clearly an evil being who always ran around biting people, yet he always refused to acknowledge his own identity as such. How incredibly shameless. Ling Han continued to dodge the large black dog's attacks as he described his plan. Gradually, the large black dog couldn't help but slow down and stop. There was a bright glimmer in his eyes. "Grandpa Dog shall accept this job." The large black dog stood up on his hind legs like a human before patting his iron underwear, and saying, "I'll pat my chest and guarantee that I definitely won't screw up." Ling Han's expression involuntarily darkened. "Is that your chest?" "Hee, it was a mistake, the large black dog said with a chuckle. There was suspicion on Ling Han's face, and he said, "Little Black, you're not going to screw me over as well, are you?" The large black dog instantly looked as if he had been insulted. He opened his mouth and was just about to bite at Ling Han, yet his expression suddenly transformed into a smile instead. "You guessed it. Grandpa Dog initially wanted you to fall into a fire pit and burn to death. This detestable dog." "I'm kidding. With our relationship, how can I harm you?" the large black dog said with a serious expression. The large black dog had a history of misdeeds, so his words naturally couldn't be trusted. However, Ling Han believed that his plan was very much to the large black dog's tastes. Even if the large black dog wanted to screw him over, he would only do so after the plan had been successfully carried out. Otherwise, the spectacular show wouldn't be possible. The human and dog started to discuss the fine details of the plan. Both of them were so evil that they could even frighten themselves, and after some discussions, they refined the initial plan that was full of flaws into one that was almost flawless. "Little Han, you're so evil. Be careful of growing an ulcer on your head and dying early," the large black dog said in a solemn yet nonsensical manner. Ling Han laughed and said, "In terms of evil, I have yet to reach 1/10,000th of your level." "Naturally. Grandpa Dog is the ancestor of all evil beings, so I'm also immune to all poisons." The large black dog didn't feel ashamed upon hearing Ling Han's words, but instead felt a sense of smugness. After the large black dog left, Ling Han entered the Black Tower with the Empress. The Ding clan was like a dragon lair in a tiger den, so Ling Han naturally wouldn't risk bringing the Empress over. Thus, like with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, he left the Empress in the Black Tower. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was completely undistracted as she continued to cultivate every day. Not only did she have the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, but she was also cultivating in the celestial realm. Add to that the reincarnation tree, and it was only natural that her cultivation had already soared to the peak stage of the Genesis tier. However, advancing to the severing mundane tier was still far too difficult. At this moment, she had already exhausted the inheritance power from the 3 Phoenix Kings. Thus, she could only rely on her own abilities if she wanted to reach the severing mundane tier. However, even prodigies like Changsun Liang needed to cultivate for at least 10,000 years in order to advance to the severing mundane tier. Although the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had the reincarnation tree to help her, her aptitude was far too inferior. In fact, it would already be an outstanding achievement if she could reach the barrier to the severing mundane tier within 10,000 years. However, she definitely couldn't slash heaven and earth. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to withstand the backlash, and thus would only end up killing herself. In other words, she needed to slash her own mundane relationships. That being the case, it was extremely likely that she would slash her feelings toward Ling Han. The Great Tao was merciless, and if one wanted to comprehend the Great Tao, they naturally needed to be aloof and devoid of desires as well. However, Ling Han didn't want to lose a wife. As such, he desired to concoct some alchemical pill that could extend one's lifespan without them needing to reach the severing mundane tier. Anyhow, reaching the severing mundane tier was far too difficult, so it was very likely that the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden wouldn't be able to succeed. If she forcefully attempted to advance, she would only end up killing herself. Regarding this, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was also helpless. Even in the ancient realm, her talent could only be regarded as fairly good. The gulf between her and the top prodigies was far too huge. Ling Han dragged his 2 wives over to have a threesome. The Empress didn't mind this, but the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was so embarrassed that she couldn't help but bite Ling Han afterward. She was easily embarrassed, and there were still many positions that they had yet to unlock. Right now, threesomes were still extremely difficult for her to accept. Your husband is about to venture into danger today, so aren't you going to give me some encouragement? Ling Han said with a hearty laugh. After dressing himself, he couldn't help but slap the Empress' shapely buttocks. Upon seeing them undulate, he almost gave a howl as he leaped toward her again. After making love for a long while, Ling Han finally exited the Black Tower. The Ding clan had said that they would open their ancestral shrine in 3 days and accept Ling Han into the Ding clan there. At the same time, they would also bestow upon him the surname of Ding. Judging from these actions, it was clear that the Ding clan genuinely valued Ling Han. They were especially opening their ancestral shrine for him. However, whether or not they would target Ling Han during this process was another matter entirely. That's their ancestral shrine. Ling Han said with a shake of his head and chuckled. It was clear that after he went in, the ancestral shrine of the Ding clan would definitely become non-existent. At that time, what kind of expressions would the members of the Ding clan wear? After finishing his disguise, Ling Han smiled and left the army encampment, heading toward the Ding clan. After returning victorious, Ling Han and the others with outstanding achievements had all received 3 years of leave. During this time, they would receive their pay as usual. Thus, Ling Han was extremely free right now, and he was able to go wherever he wanted. Ling Han finally arrived at the Ding clan after casually strolling around for 2 days. This was inevitable. After all, Dark Moon City was far too large. The Ding clan was bustling with activity today as the young King Tier Ling Han was about to join them. Many people came over to witness this ceremony. Moreover, even up until today, the Ding clan and the Long clan still refused to believe that Ling Han would truly join the Ding clan. After all, this didn't make sense. To say nothing of the Ding clan's lack of promises and benefits, even if they did give Ling Han enough benefits, their previous conflicts should have still pushed Ling Han toward the Duan clan or the Long clan. This was especially the case if they all promised the same benefits. Something was wrong. Not only the Ding clan, but everyone else also found this to be incredibly strange. If Ling Han truly wanted to join some force, Wouldn't it be better to find one in Black Moon City? The ceiling was higher, the stage was larger, and resources were also more abundant. Ling Han has arrived, someone shouted upon seeing the man in azure robes appear before the front gate. The protagonist of today had finally arrived. Moreover, regardless of what Ling Han was planning, they could only judge today's events after they were over. Once Ling Han joined the Ding clan, there would be no turning back. Chapter 17-18, Competing to Enrage Each Other? Ling Han, a noble and dignified voice suddenly said. Ling Han looked over, only to see Mao Dai striding toward him. Ling Han hurriedly bowed, and said, "Greetings, Lord Mao." He was genuinely extremely thankful toward Mao Dai, as it was him who had taught him another method of severing the mundane. In Ling Han's eyes, this was a huge favor. However, Mao Dai was slightly displeased as he asked, "Are you truly going to join the Ding clan?" Mao Dai couldn't help but feel that this was a shame. After all, he felt like even he didn't have the right to become Ling Han's master. However, like a bright pearl entering darkness, Ling Han was actually going to join the Ding clan? Wasn't this an act of self-humiliation? Ling Han smiled, and said, "I want to join the Ding clan, yet I still have to see whether the Ding clan is willing to accept me." What does this mean? Mao Dai found this reply to be extremely strange. The Ding clan had already opened their ancestral shrine, and they were already about to carve Ling Han's name into their family tree. As such, how could this be fake? Moreover, once Ling Han was bestowed with the surname of Ding, he would officially become a member of the Ding clan. At that time, no one would have the ability to interfere, regardless of what the Ding clan did to Ling Han. They wouldn't be in a position to interfere. "Rest assured, Lord Mao, I'm extremely clear about what I'm doing," Ling Han said in reassurance. Mao Dai looked at Ling Han deeply before eventually nodding in reply. He decided that he would be an obedient spectator today. Severing Mundane tier Grand Elders from the Duan clan and the Long clan also walked over and tried to persuade Ling Han for one final time. Otherwise, once the ceremony began, there would be no turning back. A junior from the Ding clan walked over with an expression of respect and said, "Young Master Han." Right now, Ling Han still had yet to officially join the Ding clan. Thus, even if they were unwilling to, they still had to act welcoming and respectful. Regarding how they would treat him later, that was unknown. Perhaps the Ding clan would forget about their old hostilities, or perhaps the Ding clan would immediately kill him. Anyhow, this would be a private matter for the Ding clan, and it would have nothing to do with anyone else. Ling Han remained silent as he nodded in acknowledgement. He had absolutely no good feelings toward the Ding clan, so he couldn't be bothered speaking any nonsense at all. The person who had greeted him was unfazed as he said, "It's almost time. Please follow me, young Master Han." He led Ling Han into the Ding clan. In just a short while, he would enter the ancestral shrine. This was an extremely serious ceremony, so Ling Han would naturally need to make some preparations. There was already no time for abstaining from meat or alcohol, but he could at the very least still bathe and burn some incense. As for the other spectators and guests, the Ding clan naturally sent members of their clan to welcome and lead them into the ancestral shrine. Generally speaking, the addition of a measly Genesis tier cultivator into the Ding clan couldn't have caught the attention of severing Mundane tier Grand Elders. However, Ling Han was far too outstanding. His battle against the Holy Son of the Black Moon sect had ended in a draw, and his battle afterward had more so astounded everyone. Thus, not only did Grand Elders from the Ding clan attend this ceremony, but even mighty figures from the Duan clan and the Long clan had come. Would you look, even Mao Dai had come, hadn't he? His status was extremely high, and he could be regarded as the #1 elite among those below the 4th severance. Ling Han followed the junior of the Ding clan into a courtyard. Here, he took a bath before entering the main room to offer some incense and cleanse his mind. An hour later, Ling Han changed into new clothes before opening the door and leaving. Unexpectedly, however, it was Ding Xiaochen who was waiting for him outside. Ling Han. Ding Xiaochen said through gritted teeth. He looked like he wanted to swallow Ling Han alive, and he continued, "You might have tricked the others, but you can't trick me. You're definitely up to no good." Ling Han chuckled, and said, "I initially thought you were pig-head, but who knew that you also have some imagination? You've calculated wrong this time." Ding Xiaochen said coldly. "Once you enter the Ding clan, you'll become a member of our clan when you're alive, and a ghost of our clan when you're dead. If the clan wants you alive, then you'll live. If the clan wants you dead, then you can only die." "Are you trying to frighten me?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Your fate was already sealed the moment that you stepped into the Ding clan," Ding Xiaochen said with a humph. "Right now, there's already no turning back." However, Ling Han remained calm as he said, No, please don't misunderstand. I still haven't joined the Ding clan yet. Moreover, in a while. I'm afraid that the Ding clan might not agree to accept me. You're nothing but a measly Genesis tier cultivator, so what trouble can you cause?" Ding Xiaochen said dismissively. Ling Han shook his head with a sigh, and said, "Seems like I was wrong to praise you for having an imagination. Your brain capacity is far too small, and it's probably comparable to that of cockroaches." "You." Ding Xiaochen glowered at Ling Han in anger. Ling Han smiled, and said, "What? You want to fight?" Ding Xiaochen forcefully suppressed his anger. He genuinely couldn't challenge Ling Han. Fighting against him? More like being pummeled by him. "Follow me. It's time to worship the ancestors." Ding Xiaochen flicked his sleeves as he turned around to lead the way. However, he suddenly stopped after walking a few steps. This was because Ling Han wasn't following him. He couldn't help but snap in impatience. "Hurry up and follow me. If I obeyed your orders just like that, how humiliating would that be?" Not only did Ling Han not follow Ding Xiaochen, but he even sat down instead. "Keep shouting. Anyhow, I'm in no hurry at all." "Perhaps you're in no hurry, but I'm in a great hurry." Ding Xiaochen was red-faced with anger. It was because he greatly detested Ling Han that he had volunteered for this task. He wanted to seize this opportunity to abuse Ling Han. However, instead of angering Ling Han, he had angered himself instead. Moreover, if they were late, Ling Han would naturally suffer some punishment. However, would he get off any better? If he failed to complete such a simple task, what kind of horrible impression would he leave in the elders' minds? "Ling Han, don't sabotage yourself." Ding Xiaochen was unwilling to beg Ling Han, so he could only choose to threaten him. However, there was a hint of ridicule on Ling Han's face as he glanced over. It was this kind of disdain that almost drove Ding Xiaochen insane. This was far too contemptuous. It was as if he weren't a human in Ling Han's eyes, but rather a pile of *T that wasn't deserving of a second glance. "Ling Han," he shouted. Ling Han crossed his legs before picking at his ears, and saying, "If you keep barking, I'll start to pummel you." Was there anything more threatening than this? "Ling Han, what do you want?" Ding Xiaochen asked solemnly. Ling Han grinned, and replied, "Your words were too hurtful just then, so there's trauma in my mind now. I suddenly don't feel like moving." Holy *T. Who was angering whom just then? However, Ding Xiaochen didn't dare to shout again, so he could only say, "Fine, I'll apologize." "There's no sincerity," Ling Han said with a shake of his head. How could he show sincerity? Ding Xiaochen gritted his teeth, and said, "Sorry for the nonsense I uttered just then. I know you're broad-minded, so please forgive me." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I'm extremely petty." Fuck. Ding Xiaochen rarely lost his composure. However, before Ling Han, he was always facing the risk of becoming a rabid dog who wanted to randomly bite people. He stared at Ling Han in resentment before suddenly bowing, and saying, "I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for?" Ling Han said with a chuckle. Although your words were hurtful, I felt like they were fairly accurate. Sigh, people have to be upright and not submissive. Why did you submit so quickly? Where's your backbone and courage? Ding Xiaochen was red-faced with anger, and flames were about to burst from his nostrils. He wanted to kill someone. However, Ling Han suddenly stood up, and said, "What are you standing there in a daze for? Hurry up and walk. If we miss the blessed time, can you shoulder the responsibility?" These words easily defeated Ding Xiaochen's anger, and he could only obediently lead the way. Before Ling Han joined the Ding clan, he had to play along with him no matter what. At this moment, he truly wanted to slap himself in the face. Even if he wanted to exact revenge on Ling Han, it didn't have to be today. He had truly shot himself in the foot. Chapter 1719, Spectacular Show. Ling Han followed Ding Xiaochen to the ancestral shrine of the Ding clan. The Ding clan was huge, and this was obvious from their possession of a magnificent mountain that soared into the clouds. How was this a clan? Their land was even larger than an entire city of the ancient realm. Thus, even though they were both saint kings, it still took them almost an entire hour to reach the ancestral shrine. This was a golden shrine that was radiating with a majestic and dignified aura. It was both noble and solemn. However, Ling Han suddenly shook his head, and said, "What a pity, what an absolute pity." Pity what? Ding Xiaochen asked in his mind. However, he didn't voice his question to Ling Han. After all, conversing with Ling Han would never end well for him. He certainly didn't want to seek humiliation again. Moreover, once Ling Han became a member of the Ding clan, he would become meat on a chopping board. In actual fact, Ling Han was naturally expressing pity for this building that was about to transform into rubble soon. Many mighty figures had already arrived, and were sitting in the stands. Several Third Severance Grand Elders had come today, and the only two from the Ding clan had also come. As for Ding Xiaolong, he hadn't come to attend this ceremony. It wasn't important enough to catch his attention. Ding Xiaochen breathed a sigh of relief after bringing Ling Han to the ancestral shrine. He swore that he would definitely exact revenge tomorrow. He would show Ling Han his might. He shot a glare at Ling Han before turning around to leave. "Ling Han," a low voice suddenly called. This was none other than Ding Hu. He started at Ling Han, and said, "It's almost time. Come and worship the ancestors of the Ding clan, and we'll officially accept you into the Ding clan." Ling Han smiled, and asked, "Are you certain that the Ding clan is willing to accept me?" Wasn't this nonsense? They had already opened their ancestral shrine, so how could they be playing around? Of course. Ding Hu replied with a nod. Members of the two other large clans were also present, so he naturally had to consider the Ding clan's face. Otherwise, how could he be bothered speaking nonsense with a Genesis tier cultivator? "You won't regret it?" Ling Han asked with a smile. He was buying time. Meanwhile, he also started to grumble in his mind. Why isn't the large black dog here yet? He isn't trying to genuinely screw me over, is he? Ding Hu grimaced upon hearing this. Such annoying questions. He humphed, and replied, "We naturally won't regret it." You. However, Ling Han cut Ding Hu off, saying, "Will the Ding clan take responsibility no matter what troubles I cause?" Ding Hu was already feeling a strong urge to kill someone. He felt immense regret for accepting this task. This was a young man who was always capable of driving people insane. However, he calmed himself down, and said, "If you're a member of the Ding clan, we'll naturally be your shield regardless of what happens." Really? For real? Ling Han asked. Ding Hu's hands started to tremble. He wanted to kill someone, and no one could stop him. However, shouts of commotion suddenly traveled over from the distance. Moreover, it seemed like the commotion was fairly large. What was happening? One had to realize that this was the Ding clan. A smile spread across Ling Han's face. The large black dog had finally arrived. "Oh, you old bastard, did you not have breakfast today? Or did you waste too much energy on debauchery with women? Your legs are like jelly, and you still haven't caught up to Grandpa Dog after half a day." The large black dog's voice slowly traveled over. "Do you want Grandpa Dog to take a handicap of one leg?" Xiao. A black figure streaked through the air. This was a large black dog, yet he was wearing a pair of iron underwear that sparkled in the sunlight. One of his legs was raised, and sure enough, he was only running on 3 legs. Everyone faltered upon seeing this. What was going on? Why had a large black dog suddenly run over? This was the ancestral shrine of the Ding clan. Just how holy and dignified was this place? Even damaging a single tile would enrage their ancestors into leaping out from their graves. Impudence! Ding Hu roared as he immediately lashed out and grabbed at the large black dog. This large black dog was only at the Genesis tier, so heaven knew how he had managed to sneak into this place. However, Ding Hu suddenly understood how after grabbing at the large black dog. This was because the large black dog was extremely slippery. As he reached over, the large black dog actually shattered the void and started to dash around. Before long, he had already escaped from the range of his attack. Everyone was deeply astonished by this. How was this possible? Even a severing Mundane tier Grand Elder had failed to capture the large black dog. Not only was Ding Hu astounded, but Mao Dai and the other elites from the Duan clan and the Long clan also exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, Mao Dai immediately looked toward Ling Han. Just then, his conversation with Ling Han had been extremely strange. Perhaps this large black dog had something to do with it. Boom! A terrifying aura surged over, causing everyone under the severing Mundane tier to go pale. Some vomited blood, while others collapsed in their seats. The guests from the other clans were naturally all elites, so those who were wounded at this moment were all members of the Ding clan. Ding Hu was infuriated. First it was that large black dog, but who was it now? What place did they think this was? Was this a place where they could act wantonly? Humph! Who dares to act wantonly in my Ding clan? He roared as he hovered into the air. He moved forward to intercept the uninvited guest. Pa! However, a figure suddenly dashed over and furiously slapped Ding Hu across the face. Ding Hu was instantly sent flying, and he eventually crashed into a distant wall, blasting a gaping hole in it. He then disappeared in this hole. This. Ding Hu was a severing Mundane tier Grand Elder. Although he was only at the first severance, those who advanced to this cultivation level were all supreme prodigies. Everyone looked toward the uninvited guest. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that this was an elderly man. There was a youth in his hands, and the aura that he exuded had already transformed into a tangible wave. It was as tumultuous as the vast sea. Fourth severance. Mao Dai and the other third severance Grand Elders from the Long clan and the Duan clan exclaimed in unison. This elderly man was clearly more powerful than them. There were only 3 fourth severance Grand Elders in Dark Moon City, and they were none other than the current clan leaders of the 3 great clans. However, this old man clearly wasn't one of them, so where had he come from? Meanwhile, Ling Han was well aware of who this old man was. He was a member of the Han clan, and he had come here with Han Chi this time. Otherwise, it would be far too dangerous for a Genesis tier cultivator to venture around the celestial realm by themselves. Elder Han, why are you so angry? Ding Shan and Ding Song asked as they walked over to greet him. They naturally recognized him as he had come to visit them just a few days ago. At that time, they had spoken many good words to appease him. This old man was called Han Lu, and he couldn't be regarded as a top-notch elite of the Han clan. Here, however, he was definitely powerful enough to act as a domineering elder. Pooh! Someone suddenly spluttered with laughter. As it turned out, there was a large hole in Han Lu's clothing on his rear, revealing a patch of his pale white buttocks. By the looks of it, this hole was the result of a bite. Combining this with the large black dog's sudden arrival, it was easy to imagine what had happened. Han Lu had been bitten by a dog, and it was because of this that he had charged over. As a mighty fourth severance Grand Elder, he had actually been bitten by a dog. How could he not be enraged? Han Lu completely ignored Ding Xiaochen and Ding Song as he continued to look for the large black dog. However, as if he had evaporated from the world, Han Lu couldn't find a single trace of the large black dog. There was a loud roar as Ding Hu burst out from the hole in the wall. He was so furious that he wanted to kill someone. He had actually been attacked in the ancestral shrine of his own clan. Was there still any justice and reason in the world? However, upon charging out, he finally discovered that it was actually Han Lu who had slapped him across the face. His anger instantly vanished, and his expression became as awkward as could be. He had wanted to vent his fury, yet he discovered that his target wasn't someone he could provoke. What kind of feeling was this? Oi, old geezer, you actually dared to attack someone in my Ding clan? Are you tired of living? A voice suddenly said. This was none other than Ling Han. Chapter 1720, Huge Destruction. The members of the Ding clan almost suffered a heart attack upon hearing Ling Han's words. Are you fucking crazy? Do you know who this old man is? Before a severing mundane tier Grand Elder, is there any room for you to speak? Before Han Lu could explode in rage, Ding Song hurriedly said, Please forgive him, Elder. This is a junior from our clan, and he's never witnessed the world. Please don't take his words to heart. Today's ceremony was to accept Ling Han into the Ding clan, so Ding Song was subconsciously starting to view Ling Han as a member of the Ding clan already. Han Lu glanced over with a hint of anger on his face. However, he didn't erupt in rage. Although the Ding clan was insignificant in his eyes, it was still a subordinate of the Fu clan, after all. He could put pressure on them, but if he wantonly killed people, that would be equivalent to attacking the Fu clan's face. Thus, he needed to be careful. Of course, he could also choose to forcefully kill people. Who told Ling Han to offend a fourth severance Grand Elder in the first place? Most importantly, Han Lu wanted to kill that large black dog. That dog had actually dared to bite his bum. How could he accept this? However, the large black dog was indeed extraordinary. He was only at the Genesis tier, yet he had actually managed to bite the bum of a fourth severance Grand Elder. Moreover, he had retreated without a single wound. This was an absolute miracle. These two elders, how can we resolve this matter just like this? Ling Han said with an expression of righteousness. Moreover, Elder Hu has also been severely wounded, so how can we tolerate this? This is the ancestral shrine of our Ding clan. Yet, this old geezer actually dared to commit violence here without showing any respect toward our Ding clan. If we don't punish him, what face will the Ding clan have? Ding Song, Ding Xiaochen, and Ding Hu all went pale upon hearing this. Ling Han was pushing the Ding clan into a pit of death. Sure enough, an expression of fury spread across Han Lu's face. This measly Genesis tier cultivator dared to humiliate him? He was seeking death. It was you, the youth who was being held in Han Lu's hands suddenly said. He stared at Ling Han with an expression of rage. He was none other than Han Qi. After being obliterated, he had surprisingly used some mysterious method to nurture a new body. Moreover, this body was definitely of the same bloodline as his. Otherwise, the affinity between them wouldn't be so high. Sure enough, Immortal Palace tier forces were truly powerful and impressive. Ling Han glanced at him and said, The adults are speaking, so why are you interjecting? Old geezer, hurry up and kneel to beg for forgiveness. However, Han Lu looked toward Han Qi and asked, Cheer, what's wrong? As the pampered son of the ancestor of the Han clan, the status of Han Qi was far too high. Otherwise, how could Han Lu personally accompany him around? He was a severing mundane tier Grand Elder, so his status would be extremely high no matter where he went in the celestial realm. Han Chi's entire body was trembling. This was out of anger. After so many years, he had finally found the perpetrator who had attacked him. His face was full of killing intent as he used his divine sense to communicate with Han Chi. Han Lu was also enraged upon hearing his words. Good one, Ding clan. And you dared to say that the criminal in the ancient realm had nothing to do with you? Then who's this? How courageous of you. The last few times I asked, you even patted your chests and said that there was no such person. And I almost believed you people. Han Lu's expression suddenly became calm. He suppressed his anger and asked Ding Song and the others, this is a disciple of the Ding clan, am I correct? Just then, he had heard Ding Song refer to this person as a junior of their clan. However, he still needed to confirm this before he flared up in rage. Elder Han, it's our fault for not teaching him properly. We're truly sorry for this, Ding Song hurriedly said. In his eyes, apologizing was definitely the way to go at this moment. He didn't consider anything else. Heh, so you're admitting it now. Ding clan, how audacious of you. Han Lu suddenly roared. Boom. His voice transformed into a wave that surged into the surroundings. At this moment, there was nothing he needed to fear. So what if this was a subordinate force of the Fu clan? A member of their Han clan had already had their physical body obliterated, so how could they not exact revenge? In fact, the Fu clan definitely wouldn't interfere even if he destroyed the entire Ding clan. After all, how could a 3-star force be provoked by a 1-star force? Peng, peng, peng. Just how powerful was a 4th Severance Grand Elder? Under the powerful attack of his sound wave, 1/3 of the ancestral shrine was directly reduced to rubble. Meanwhile, the juniors of the Ding clan all vomited blood as they collapsed. There were countless deaths and injuries. Elder Han, Ding Shan and the others roared. To the Ding clan, this amount of damage was far too great. Humph, I'm going to destroy the Ding clan today. Han Lu was merciless, yet he didn't target Ling Han. He would execute this criminal after dragging him to 9 Underworld City. Meanwhile, Ling Han was also glad to watch this brilliant spectacle. After cooking up such a grand plan, and after acting for so long, it was finally time to reap the rewards. This felt incredible. Ding Shan and the others resisted with all their might, yet how could 3rd Severance Grand Elders rival the power of a 4th Severance Grand Elder? They would need at least several hundred other 3rd Severance Grand Elders to surmount the gulf between their cultivation levels. This was not to mention that Ding Hu was only a 1st Severance Grand Elder. Ding Shan and Ding Song vomited blood each time that Han Lu attacked them. Meanwhile, Ding Hu didn't dare to face his attacks at all. If he were hit by Han Lu's attacks, he would definitely die on the spot. The Ding clan had genuinely been screwed over. A severing mundane tier battle had erupted inside their clan territory, so just how much destruction was it going to cause? Most importantly, this was the ancestral shrine of their Ding clan. This was where the memorial tablets and remains of their ancestors were placed. After a few attacks, however, all of the memorial tablets naturally collapsed. Ling Han had absolutely no sympathy for them. In the past, the Ding clan had committed innumerable crimes to steal the Hu clan's celestial technique. In fact, they had even sought help from a celestial king tier force and directly erased the Hu clan. Just how sinful was this crime? Even though they were dead, Ling Han naturally wouldn't allow them to be peacefully worshipped. They deserved to be condemned for all eternity. The Ding clan was filled with an atmosphere of grief and indignance. This Han Lu was far too domineering. He even dared to destroy the memorial tablets of their ancestors. Moreover, he had actually wounded and killed so many people. Of course, they still hated Ling Han the most. After all, if it weren't for Ling Han's words, would Han Lu have erupted in such furious rage? They naturally believed that this was because Ling Han had provoked Han Lu just then. How could they know that there was actually a deeper reason? Ding Hu found an opportunity to break free, and he immediately charged at Ling Han. He was going to capture this brat and ask for punishment from Han Lu. Everything was Ling Han's fault. The Ding clan was innocent. Indeed, Ling Han hadn't even worshipped the ancestors of the Ding clan yet, so he couldn't be regarded as a true member of the Ding clan. They couldn't be dragged down because of Ling Han. Evil brat, I knew that nothing good could happen with you around. Ding Hu's eyes were red with grief and rage, yet he knew that they definitely had to swallow this painful consequence. After all, did they dare to seek compensation from the Han clan? Thus, they could only kill Ling Han to ease their anger. If he knew that this was all part of Ling Han's plans, perhaps he would directly die from uncontrollable anger. Ling Han grinned and said, "Old bastard, I've been enduring you for a long time. Come and attack me." Pung! Ding Hu launched a strike, and Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, Ling Han surprisingly didn't shatter into pieces of broken flesh. Instead, he appeared completely unscathed. His physique was far too powerful at this moment, so much so that even First Severance Grand Elders wouldn't be able to kill him with raw power alone. They could only use the power of regulations to slowly refine him. Continue your performance, continue. Han Lu smiled coldly upon seeing these scenes. How easy was it for a First Severance Grand Elder to kill a Genesis tier cultivator? Yet, Ding Hu's attack hadn't even forced Ling Han to spit blood. Their acting skills were far too inferior. "Brother Han, you've taken things too far," a voice suddenly said with a sigh. Ding Xiaolong finally appeared. If he still didn't appear, then the Ding clan would genuinely be done for. Chapter 1721, Biggest Fools. Ding Xiaolong's appearance instantly caused Han Lu to go on full alert. He didn't dare to wantonly attack people anymore. Although Ding Xiaolong was only a fourth Severance Grand Elder of a small clan, and although the celestial techniques that he possessed definitely couldn't rival that of elites from three-star clans, his ability to reach the Severing Mundane tier in such an environment proved the extraordinary nature of his talent. In fact, his talent was enough to surmount the gulf caused by his inferior celestial techniques. This was a powerful opponent. Han Lu looked at Ding Xiaolong coldly. He felt like there was no need to speak any nonsense. If he couldn't deal with this opponent, he would simply return to his clan to request help from dividing soul tier elites. Once they came, could they not subdue a Severing Mundane tier force? "Brother Han, has there been some misunderstanding?" Ding Xiaolong asked with a grave expression. As long as the Ding clan was in the right, they wouldn't need to be afraid of the Han clan. Otherwise, was the Fu clan a mere decoration? Would they allow other forces to provoke them so wantonly? Internal battles within the clan were one matter, and being bullied and provoked by outside forces was another matter. Misunderstanding? Humph. Misunderstanding? Han Lu was also filled with rage. All of your dirty schemes have been revealed, yet you're still telling me this is a misunderstanding? Do you think I'm a stupid monkey? Misunderstand your mom. Ding Xiaolong could also be considered as an extremely intelligent person. However, he was completely stumped as to why Han Lu was so furious at this moment. Even if someone were angry, it should have been him, no? Why was Han Lu so angry? Anyhow, he was also angered at this moment. The memorial tablets of his ancestors had been destroyed, and this was a huge provocation. "Brother Han, please do calm down. I'll lead you out of Dark Moon City." Even if the Han clan were in the wrong, Ding Xiaolong still didn't dare to target Han Lu. Thus, he could only ask him to leave the city so that he couldn't kill more people. Ha ha ha. Han Lu chuckled coldly, and said, "How audacious of your Ding clan. You're but a measly Severing Mundane tier force, yet you actually dare to provoke the Han clan. How incredibly admirable." He called them admirable, yet his face was burning with rage and disdain. Ding Xiaolong's expression instantly darkened. "You've almost unearthed the graves of our ancestors, yet you're still scolding us instead? Even if you're from a 3-star force, you still can't wantonly pick on others like this. Then I'll have to offend you. Ding Xiaochen said as he lashed out. He was going to subdue Han Lu and expel him from Dark Moon City. However, Han Lu naturally wouldn't cower. He immediately rushed over to battle with Ding Xiaochen. They were both tremendously powerful 4th Severance Grand Elders, though Ding Xiaochen was slightly more powerful in terms of true strength. After all, if he were in a 3-star force, he would be talented enough to reach the Dividing Soul tier even if he weren't talented enough to reach the Immortal Palace tier. They were both at the 4th Severance, yet he was the more powerful of the two. However, this was the ancestral shrine of the Ding clan, and even though more than half of it had already been obliterated, many members of the Ding clan were still present. Moreover, the surrounding lands were also part of the Ding clan's territory. As such, Ding Xiaochen naturally didn't dare to unleash his full power. Meanwhile, Han Lu didn't have any such worries. He simply needed to unleash his full battle prowess. Their battle was intense, and even the 4th Severance elites of the Long clan and the Duan clan were alarmed. They immediately rushed over to appease the situation. This was Dark Moon City, after all, so the 3 clans were all in the same boat when it came to dealing with outsiders. Otherwise, the Black Moon sect would also punish them later. With the addition of these 2 elites, Han Lu was naturally no match for them anymore. Thus, he could only stop his attacks and retreat. His expression was cold as he gazed at the 3 4th Severance elites, and he said in a menacing voice, "Very well. All of you want to become enemies of the Han clan, am I correct? Brother Han, is there some unresolvable dispute?" the Grand Elder from the Long clan asked patiently. Han Lu pointed at Ding Xiaochen and replied, "Ask him." "Ask me?" Ding Xiaochen was completely mystified. "You've already obliterated the ancestral shrine of my clan, yet you're still telling them to ask me? How should I know why you're acting like a madman?" He flicked his sleeves and said, "I don't know anything. I only know that my Ding clan was almost obliterated by you." Han Lu was just about to say something, yet he suddenly became wild with rage upon seeing something in the corner of his eyes. His hand was shaking as he pointed at Ding Xiaochen, and he shouted, "Very well. Very well. Very well. How courageous of you. How very courageous of you." What was going on? Ding Xiaochen and the elites from the Long clan and the Duan clan turned around, only to see a person and a large black dog standing far away in the distance. Apart from them, there was no one else. Was there something wrong with this? Why was Han Lu shaking in anger? However, how could Han Lu not be wild with anger? Ling Han was the criminal who had killed Han Qi. Moreover, the detestable large black dog who had bitten his bum was actually standing beside Ling Han. What did this signify? This signified that everything was the fault of the Ding clan. How incredibly audacious. They actually dared to toy around with him and toy around with the Han clan. "Eat my attack!" Han Lu roared as he charged toward Ding Xiaochen. His eyes were red with rage. He was genuinely enraged at this moment. How many years had he been renowned for? Yet, he had actually been bitten in the bum by the large black dog. Not only that, but his bum had even been exposed to so many people. This was utter humiliation. Although Ding Xiaochen was feeling baffled and incredibly wronged, he had no option but to block and engage in combat now that Han Lu was charging over and attacking as if his life depended on it. Meanwhile, the elites from the Long clan and the Duan clan continued to persuade them to stop. The scene was as chaotic as could be. Mao Dai wore a strange expression as he watched on from afar. This was because he was at least 80% sure that this had all been planned by Ling Han. However, regardless of how hard he racked his brain, he still couldn't figure out the cause and effect of everything. How had Ling Han redirected Han Lu's hatred toward the Ding clan? Hang on. Why had Ling Han insisted on joining the Ding clan? Was this the critical point? Mao Dai suddenly came to a realization. The Han clan had already looked for trouble with the Ding clan several times. According to rumors, this was because the physical body of a member of the Han clan had been destroyed while he was adventuring and training in the ancient realm. Moreover, the culprit was supposedly a member of the Ding clan. What if the culprit was Ling Han? If that were the case, then everything made perfect sense. Of course, there were still several more specific problems to this theory. For example, how had Ling Han entered the ancient realm? One had to realize that only those at the dividing soul tier and above could send people into the ancient realm. Han Lu attacked wildly, yet he was ultimately unable to rival 3 opponents at the same cultivation level. The battle stopped once again. However, Han Lu was like a wounded beast who wanted to bite anyone he saw. Grand Elder Ding Song and Ding Xiaochen called as they flew over. The battle had been far too intense just then, so they hadn't dared to venture too close. What's the matter? Ding Xiaochen asked coldly. Everything is because of that evil brat, the 2 elites said as they pointed at Ling Han. In the beginning, they hadn't realized this either. However, upon seeing Ling Han and the large black dog standing together, they finally gained a rough idea of the current situation. If the large black dog hadn't attracted Han Lu over, would all of this have happened? Thinking about this carefully, Ling Han's insistence on joining the Ding clan was a comprehensive scheme from the very beginning. What? Ding Xiaochen couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. The culprit behind everything was actually a measly Genesis tier cultivator? Han Lu was also puzzled upon hearing this. Ding Xiaolong's expression of astonishment wasn't fake. Moreover, how could a 4th Severance Grand Elder be astonished so easily? The 4 severing Mundane tier elites instantly turned their gazes toward Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Han Lu, Ding Xiaolong, congratulations on becoming the biggest fools in history. Chapter 1722, Extraordinary. Ha 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 ha. The large black dog was rolling on the floor and laughing. Upon hearing Ling Han's words, and upon seeing the large black dog's laughter, Ding Xiaolong and Han Lu were both angered to the extreme. What a detestable brat. If they still hadn't understood that everything was Ling Han's doing at this moment, then they would have wasted their cultivation as 4th Severance Grand Elders. This brat was far too audacious. He was only at the Genesis tier, yet he actually dared to act so wantonly. Where had his courage come from? What an absolute madman. Meanwhile, Mao Dai and the others were also deeply astonished. They hadn't imagined that all of this had been triggered by Ling Han. More importantly, he had actually admitted his crime. And he was even provoking them further. Provoking 2 4th Severance Grand Elders would indeed give one a sense of achievement. However, did Ling Han still want to live? Ding Hu roared in anger and charged at Ling Han again. He hated Ling Han with a passion, and it looked like he wanted to skin Ling Han alive and swallow him whole at this moment. Perhaps Ling Han was the only Genesis tier cultivator in this world who could enrage severing Mundane tier Grand Elders to such a degree. Pung! 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 Ding Hu launched a flurry of attacks, while Ling Han raised his arms to block. His battle prowess was still far inferior to 1st Severance Grand Elders, so he could only passively withstand these attacks. However, his physique was far too powerful, so these attacks were unable to even make him vomit blood. Everyone was stunned upon seeing this, and there was the sound of many people gulping. This was inconceivable. The defenses of a Genesis tier cultivator could become this powerful? If someone said that Ding Hu was still acting at this moment, who would believe them? Humph. Han Lu chuckled coldly as he grabbed at Ling Han. Boom. His large hand transformed into a pitch-black mountain that was intertwined with the Great Tao. It was incredibly powerful. Tight situation. Retreat, the large black dog shouted as he hurriedly spread his legs and ran. He was extremely slippery, and his speed was also incredibly quick. I'll hitch a ride, Ling Han said as he grabbed onto the large black dog's tail. Whoosh. Because of the large black dog's incredible speed, Ling Han started to billow in the wind like a flag. "Let go of me. You're too heavy," the large black dog shouted. "Stinky brat, you didn't sh*t in the morning, did you? Your entire tummy is full of sh*t. No worries, I believe in you," Ling Han said with a hearty laugh. "But Grandpa Dog doesn't believe in himself," the large black dog said as he wagged his tongue. He started to run even quicker. Boom! A giant hand slammed down behind them, yet it completely missed its target. The large black dog was far too quick. Anyhow, this was expected for someone who always ran around causing trouble. Trying to escape. Ding Xiaochen charged over, his body wrapped within intertwining regulations. In fact, these regulations had already shrouded his entire body. No one could understand the fury and hate in his mind at this moment. The ancestral shrine of the Ding clan had been obliterated, yet he couldn't do anything to the person who had committed this crime. Moreover, the true perpetrator was actually a measly Genesis tier cultivator. Not only that, but this was a cultivator he had personally allowed into the Ding clan. He had to shoulder these consequences. He was a fucking sinner of the Ding clan. Swoosh! Ding Xiaochen accelerated, and his speed was surprisingly even quicker than the large black dog's. He had combusted his life force to forcefully raise his speed. Although he could only maintain this speed for a short period of time, could Ling Han, a measly Genesis tier cultivator, still escape from him once he caught up? Die! He roared in fury as he mercilessly lashed out at Ling Han. Han Lu's mind wavered. He had initially wanted to stop Ding Xiaochen because there was most likely some celestial king tier cultivation technique hidden in Ling Han's body. However, after some consideration, he felt that he could still obtain these secrets even if Ling Han were killed. He simply needed to retrieve Ling Han's fragmented soul in a timely manner. Moreover, the Ding clan was indeed innocent, yet he had still obliterated their ancestral shrine just then, so he couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Of course, if the most powerful being of the Ding clan had only been at the third severance, then he wouldn't have taken this matter to heart at all. However, Ding Xiaochen was more powerful than him. Thus, he was naturally feeling a little apprehensive. What if Ding Xiaochen went wild without any regard for the consequences? The difference between being in the right and being in the wrong was still quite large. Boom! A large hand slammed down, blocking all paths of retreat. With the large black dog's current speed, he definitely couldn't escape from Ding Xiaochen. However, Ling Han smiled calmly as he furiously kicked the large black dog's bum. Pung! Combining the force of his kick with the current speed of the large black dog, the speed of the large black dog instantly soared by an unfathomable amount. He just barely scraped out of the range of Ding Xiaochen's attacks. Pung! The powerful strike of the large hand caused the entire Dark Moon City to shudder. The mortals in the city were all uneasy and fearful. The celestial realm was far too stable, so there didn't exist any notion of earthquakes or mountains collapsing. Thus, the only cause of such a phenomenon was intense battles between elites. If some shock waves swept over, then anyone who came into contact with them would certainly die. Ah, little Han, you died such a wretched death, the large black dog shouted in the distance. He patted his iron underwear, on which there was the clear outline of a foot. It was extremely evident just how powerful little Han's kick had been. He then patted his chest and shouted, "How courageous and mighty! You sacrificed your life to save Grandpa Dog. Little Han. I wish you a peaceful journey through the Yellow Spring. Grandpa Dog will definitely burn some paper notes of beautiful women for you. As for revenge, these two baldies have committed so many atrocities, so I'm sure that they'll definitely die in no time at all. As such, there's no need for me to deal with them. However, it's a shame about your treasures. If you had already decided on death, you could have at least given those treasures to Grandpa Dog." The large black dog's utterances became more and more preposterous. There was a glimmer in his thieving eyes, and it was clear that he was already coveting the treasures the Ling Han owned. The furious energy dissipated, and the soaring dust and ashes gradually settled back down. When everything became clear again, disbelief instantly spread across everyone's faces. Ling Han was standing straight and proud. Pooh! Many people instantly spluttered in shock. Was this brat genuinely at the Genesis tier? He had treated the attack of a First Severance Grand Elder like a massage on his back, and everyone could still reluctantly accept this. However, he had even withstood the attack of a Fourth Severance Grand Elder? What a bloody freak! There was a faint smile on Ling Han's face, yet he was actually smiling bitterly in his mind. Fourth Severance Grand Elders were Fourth Severance Grand Elders, after all. Just blocking a single attack had already exhausted all of his origin power. If Ding Xiaochen attacked again, he wouldn't have the ability to channel his indestructible heaven scroll to block for a second time. Huh! Little Han, you didn't die, the large black dog said as he wiped the non-existent tears from the corners of his eyes. You made me cry for nothing. Say, how are you going to compensate Grandpa Dog? Heh. Ling Han chuckled and ignored the large black dog. He then turned his gaze toward Han Lu and Ding Xiaochen, and said, what kind of Fourth Severance Grand Elders are you two? One of you couldn't even touch my sleeves, while the other couldn't even injure a single finger of mine. Sigh, I feel embarrassed and ashamed for you too. You've lived like dogs for all these years. Woof, the large black dog barked in displeasure in the distance. However, he didn't dare to leap over and start biting people due to his apprehension toward the two elites. The expressions of Han Lu and Ding Xiaochen were as dark as could be. The abilities of the large black dog and Ling Han had far exceeded their expectations. The former could nimbly dash about the space, while the latter possessed heaven-defying defenses. Who in the world are you? Han Lu asked gravely. Firstly, it was impossible for Genesis tier cultivators to enter the ancient realm without the help of at least a dividing soul tier elite. Secondly, unless Ling Han was the successor of some large sect, how could he have possessed such heaven-defying defenses? How could he have survived the attacks of Fourth Severance Grand Elders so many times? Severing Mundane tier elites should have possessed a crushing advantage over Genesis tier cultivators. This was a commonly accepted fact. Yet, this human and dog were far too extraordinary. They definitely had a profound background. Chapter 1723, Burn. Me? Ling Han smiled calmly before replying, a true man never changes his name, regardless of the situation. I'm none other than the Ding clan's Ding Xiaochen. Pooh. Ding Xiaochen almost choked upon hearing this. His expression was plaintive and pitiful. Have you become addicted to impersonating me? Although he still hated Ling Han with every fiber of his being, he wouldn't dare to provoke him even if someone gave him all the courage in the world. Would you look, even the Fourth Severance Grand Elders couldn't suppress him. Ling Han was an absolute freak. Junior Ling Han, if you continue to spout nonsense, I'll be sure to tear your mouth apart. Ding Hu said, his eyes red with anger. Ling Han shook his head, and said, old geezer, it's not that I'm demeaning you, but you're nothing but trash. Ding Hu roared in anger before charging at Ling Han again. I'll stand here and allow you to attack me. It's your victory if you can harm even a single hair of mine. Anyhow, Ling Han was already exhausted of origin power, so he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. As such, it wouldn't hurt to speak more brashly. Boom! 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 Ding Hu unleashed his full power, yet his attacks were genuinely ineffective against Ling Han. Use the power of regulations to refine him. Ding Xiaochen suddenly said. His insight was shrewd, and he quickly discovered the weakness of Ling Han's physique. Understood, Grand Elder. Ding Hu instantly changed his tactics. He chuckled coldly as the power of regulations intertwined around his hands that were pressing toward Ling Han's head. As long as he used the power of regulations to refine Ling Han's head, he could directly obliterate Ling Han's mind and annihilated his soul. Ling Han's mind wavered. However, he didn't dodge, nor did he enter the Black Tower. Pa! Ding Hu's hands grabbed Ling Han's head. Boom! He unleashed all of the power of regulations contained within his body as he attempted to forcefully refine Ling Han. Simply put, he was trying to kill Ling Han and have him return to heaven and earth. That way, he would be as dead as could be. Old geezer, I suggest that you stop immediately, Ling Han said with a faint smile. Ha 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 ha. You're trying to beg for forgiveness now? It's too late. Ding Hu said with a sneer. With his hatred toward Ling Han, he wouldn't stop at this moment even if someone gave him a celestial medicine. He needed to vent this anger, and if he didn't, he would definitely explode with frustration. Hiya, little Han, you're truly in a pinch now, the large black dog shouted. Do you have any last words? Seeing that we're friends, Grandpa Dog will definitely deliver your messages to the right people. Ling Han rolled his eyes upon hearing this. This large black dog was far too detestable. He chuckled and said, Old geezer, don't stop if you dare. Humph. Ding Hu completely ignored Ling Han's words as he continued to unleash his power of regulations to refine him. If you stop, then you're my grandson. Ling Han added. Ding Hu almost vomited blood in anger. How was this brat so toxic? Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, the large black dog was rolling on the floor and laughing. With his understanding of Ling Han, he naturally understood that Ling Han definitely had something to rely on. Thus, he wasn't worried at all. Old geezer, you're truly seeking death. Ling Han said. With a single thought, he instantly activated his 9 heavens flame. Your struggle is futile, Ding Hu sneered. He could sense the flames within Ling Han's body, yet how powerful could the flame regulations of a measly Genesis tier cultivator be? Before the power of his regulations, these flames would be easily suppressed and extinguished. Old man, I've been enduring you for a long time. Now, die. Ling Han suddenly unleashed his power. Boom! The 9 heavens flame erupted from the crown of his head, and directly soared at Ding Hu's face. Ding Hu couldn't dodge this attack. Firstly, Ling Han had unleashed the 9 heavens flame using the power of lightning, so its speed was astonishingly quick. Secondly, the distance between them was far too small, so there was almost no space for Ding Hu to dodge. Thirdly, Ding Hu was completely underestimating Ling Han, so he was as careless as could be. After all, which severing mundane tier Grand Elder would treat a measly Genesis tier cultivator seriously? Although Ling Han had already proved the strength of his physique, this was a completely different matter from offensive prowess. Thus, Ding Hu only came to his senses, and realized the terrifying power of the 9 heavens flame when it was already about to strike his face. Its power was indeed fairly weak. In fact, he could destroy it with a single breath. However, the regulations of the Great Tao that were contained within these flames caused him to feel a sense of apprehension. He would definitely suffer if he were struck by this attack. Ding Hu couldn't help but feel astounded. How could a Genesis tier cultivator unleash such an attack? However, there was already no time for him to ponder this question. Moreover, there was no time for him to dodge either. He could only spit out a mouthful of extremely pure blood in an attempt to push the 9 heavens flame away, or at least buy enough time for him to retreat. This mouthful of blood wasn't trivial, it was formed from his life force. Thus, each mouthful that he spat would severely harm his body. However, he was left with no option at this moment. He had to spit this blood in order to save his life. As long as he lived, he could always find a method to recover his life force. However, if he died, then everything would end. However, Ding Hu was instantly terrified to his core. Although his mouthful of blood had extinguished the flames, a wave of invisible heat still continued to surge toward him, directly slamming into his face and charging toward his divine sense. Ah! Ding Hu screamed in wretched agony. He couldn't spare any effort to refine Ling Han anymore. His legs trembled as he stumbled around. Wang! At this moment, his divine sense suddenly flew out from his head, resolutely abandoning his body. This. Everyone was transfixed with shock. What's going on? Did Ling Han jinx him? He told him to let go, and that he would regret it if he didn't do so. Ding Hu didn't let go, so he's become like this now. How terrifying. How can there be such a terrifying Genesis tier cultivator? He can even force a severing mundane tier Grand Elder into abandoning his body. However, this wasn't the end. Ding Hu was horrified to discover that even though his divine sense had already left his body, his soul still started to burn. Moreover, these flames were far too terrifying, and they could directly use his soul as fuel to keep burning. Not only that, but the power of regulations was also completely unable to extinguish these flames. If this continued, his soul would be directly disintegrated into ashes. At that time, he would vanish from this heaven and earth once and for all. No. Horror radiated from Ding Hu's soul. After all, everyone would be terrified by this kind of situation, especially those at the severing mundane tier. This was because their lifespan was theoretically infinite, so they more so didn't want to die. I said that if you stop, you're my grandson. Sigh. Ling Han then shook his head, and said with a chuckle, however, you're far too willful, so I definitely can't accept you as my grandson. Better that you die and reincarnate as soon as possible. In your next life, remember not to ignore the advice of kind-hearted people. Junior, hurry up and stop the flames. Ding Xiaochen shouted as he walked over and glowered at Ling Han. To the Ding clan, each severing mundane tier Grand Elder was an extremely precious resource. After all, they could only raise one such elite every hundreds of millions of years. Thus, the death of such an elite would be a colossal loss. However, Ling Han spread his hands, and said, this old geezer wanted to seek death, so there's nothing I can do about it. Then die. Ding Xiaochen roared as he unleashed the regulations of the Great Tao at Ling Han. He didn't dare to go near Ling Han anymore lest he suffered the same fate as Ding Hu. However, as a fourth Severance Grand Elder, he could naturally refine Ling Han even if he stood several meters away. In fact, he was actually being far too careful at this moment. Although the Nine Heavens flame was powerful, the limit of Ling Han's cultivation level meant that it wasn't unblockable. Just then, it was because of Ding Hu's carelessness that he had suffered such a fate. Otherwise, a severing mundane tier Grand Elder could definitely block the Nine Heavens flame if they wrapped their body in the power of regulations. However, would Ding Xiaochen dare to test this with his own body after witnessing Ding Hu's soul being mercilessly burned? Anyhow, keeping his distance would only mean using a little more time. However, he would still be able to refine Ling Han to death. Chapter 1724, Leaving Dark Moon City. Ding Xiaochen was completely unaware that if he resolutely attacked, Ling Han wouldn't be able to withstand his power anymore. Although Ling Han had blocked an attack from Ding Xiaochen just then, that had already exhausted all of his origin power. As such, he wouldn't be able to block a second attack. However, Ding Xiaochen thought that Ling Han's defenses had already reached a stage where even severing mundane tier Grand Elders couldn't wound him anymore. Thus, he directly unleashed the power of regulations to refine Ling Han. Soaring light flashing shadow spatial escape divine technique. Ling Han shouted randomly. Xiao. He directly entered the Black Tower. Fourth Severance Grand Elders were far too powerful, and using the power of regulations, they possessed the ability to refine him in just a moment's time. Ling Han suddenly vanished into thin air. Ding Xiaolong's expression was extremely dark. He was refining Ling Han, so even if Ling Han performed spatial teleportation, such a technique should have been restricted by his power unless Ling Han was more powerful than him. However, if Ling Han were more powerful than him, would he need to flee? How did he suddenly vanish? With the situation just then, even spatial god tools should have instantly exploded if they were used. Thus, Ling Han's disappearance was a complete mystery. Where is he? Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Han Lu, as well as the fourth severance grand elders from the Long clan, the Duan clan, all leaped forward. There was interest and curiosity on their faces. How had Ling Han vanished into thin air in such a situation? Did he truly teleport away? The four elites said in speculation. This was also the most reasonable speculation. I can't detect that junior's aura in Dark Moon City, Han Lu said coldly. He turned his ice-cold gaze toward the large black dog. He couldn't forget the hatred of being bitten in the bum. However, Ling Han was far too important. Not only had he killed a junior of the Han clan, but he was even involved in matters regarding Celestial King Tyr's secret techniques. Gasp. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Perhaps Ling Han was a successor of a Celestial King Tyr force? Thus, he was able to use all kinds of mysterious techniques? Moreover, unless he belonged to a top-notch force, how could he possess such temperament and manipulation abilities? Han Lu started to feel a little apprehensive. After all, not only was Ling Han strange, but the large black dog was also extremely strange. He looked like a Genesis tier cultivator, yet he possessed supreme abilities that even severing Mundane tier grand elders couldn't rival. If Ling Han were the descendant of a celestial king, then everything would make perfect sense. The more Han Lu pondered over this, the more uneasy he felt. After a brief moment, he directly grabbed Han Chi and left the Ding clan. He definitely had to report today's events to the grand elders of the clan so that they could make a decision on this matter. His status was far too low to decide anything himself. Ding Xiaochen didn't stop him. After all, what could he do even if he stopped Han Lu? Could he force him to compensate for the loss of the Ding clan? Ding Hu was still screaming in agony, yet his aura was already becoming weaker and weaker. Once the nine heavens flame combusted one's soul, it wouldn't extinguish until the burning soul was annihilated. A powerful severing Mundane tier grand elder was actually going to die at the hands of a measly Genesis tier cultivator. This was most likely an unprecedented feat in the celestial realm, and a feat that would nail Ding Hu's name onto the pillar of humiliation for all eternity. In the future, he would most likely be used as an example of what not to do. During some year, some month, and some day, Ding Hu, a first severance grand elder, was killed by a Genesis tier cultivator. Grand Elder, Ding Hu spoke his final words. Boom! His soul was burned into ashes, and even his body was completely disintegrated by the nine heavens flame. Not a single trace of his existence remained in the world. Ding Xiaochen clenched his fists, and it was as if flames were about to erupt from his eyes. Grand Elder? Ding Song and Ding Shan asked carefully. Deploy everyone to look for him. If anyone finds him, kill him without mercy. Ding Xiaochen said solemnly. Understood. The Ding clan was wild with rage. In just a short day, their ancestral shrine had been destroyed, and a first severance grand elder had also been killed. This was an unfathomable loss. While the elites of the Ding clan were busy searching for him, Ling Han seized the opportunity to calmly exit the Black Tower. He came across a few members of the Ding clan on his way, yet they were all disposed of by him in a single strike. Was there anyone under the severing Mundane tier who could rival him? After leaving the Ding clan, he entered the Black Tower again, completely concealing his aura. When the elites of the Ding clan arrived, they naturally couldn't find any traces of him. After repeating this a few times, Ling Han went to the army encampment to seek an audience with Mao Dai. He needed Mao Dai to help him leave Dark Moon City. The Ding clan would definitely guard the exits of the city, so leaving would naturally be extremely difficult. However, if Mao Dai was willing to help, then who apart from Ding Xiaochen could stop him? Upon seeing Ling Han, Mao Dai shook his head, and exclaimed, "You're truly a freak." His face was full of astonishment. Truth be told, even he didn't possess the ability to flee so easily after toying around with two fourth severance great elders. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Senior is flattering me. Do you want to hide here for a while?" Mao Dai asked with a smile. Although he was only at the third severance, he wasn't afraid of the three great clans. This was because he already had some acquaintances in the Fu clan. Once he advanced to the fourth severance, he would immediately leave this place and seek a path to become stronger. Ling Han shook his head, and replied, "Please help me leave this city, senior." Mao Dai faltered for a moment before asking in astonishment, "You want to go to the severing mundane pool?" "That's right," Ling Han said with a nod. Mao Dai looked at Ling Han as if he were a freak. He had only just advanced to the consummate level of the Genesis tier, yet he was already thinking about advancing to the severing mundane tier. His voice was extremely solemn as he said, "You need to consider this carefully. Severing the mundane isn't that easy, and if you're not careful, you might even sever your own life." Which Genesis tier cultivator didn't need to spend hundreds of millions of years or even billions of years to prepare? Only then would they dare to sever the mundane. Even as a supreme talent himself, Mao Dai had still prepared for 7 million or so years before advancing to the severing mundane tier. Moreover, when had he advanced to the consummate level of the Genesis tier? When he was 30,000 years old. He admitted that Ling Han was indeed more talented than him. However, regardless of how talented he was, could he prepare in 1 year what he had prepared in 7 million years? Mao Dai genuinely didn't believe this. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Rest assured, senior, I naturally know my limits." "Do you truly know your limits?" Mao Dai pondered for a moment, but he ultimately didn't try to persuade Ling Han anymore. This was because Ling Han's actions just then had been far too astounding. Who could have thought that a Genesis tier cultivator would be able to withstand the fury of a fourth severance Grand Elder? Thus, it wouldn't be surprising even if Ling Han performed more miracles. "Alright, I'll help you leave the city." Mao Dai didn't speak any nonsense, and he immediately started to help Ling Han leave the city. Mao Dai prepared a chariot, and Ling Han simply sat inside as they casually navigated toward the city gates. The chariot was extremely quick, and they arrived at the city gates in no time, where they were stopped by the city guards. "Brother Mao." Ding Xiaochen clasped his hands in greeting, and said, "Why are you suddenly leaving the city? Do I need your permission to leave the city?" Mao Dai asked coldly. He didn't give Ding Xiaochen any face. Ding Xiaochen's expression involuntarily darkened, yet he knew that Mao Dai wasn't someone he could easily provoke. Thus, he forcefully suppressed his anger, and said, "Brother Mao, please open the chariot door and your spatial god tool for me to inspect." "What if I say no?" Mao Dai asked calmly. "Please cooperate with us, Brother Mao," Ding Xiaochen said solemnly. He understood that Mao Dai valued Ling Han highly, so he definitely couldn't allow Mao Dai to leave the city just like that. If he helped Ling Han escape, then the Ding clan would truly have no idea where to pursue him. Mao Dai pondered for a moment before suddenly stepping aside, and saying, "Fine." Chapter 1725, Heading to the Severing Mundane Pool. Mao Dai relented far too easily, so much so that Ding Xiaochen found it slightly difficult to accept. However, he didn't hesitate as he said, "Apologies," and entered the chariot. Ding Xiaochen used his divine sense to investigate the chariot, yet he couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. He investigated it for a second time, yet he still made no discoveries. Only after investigating it for the third time did he exit the chariot and say, "Brother Mao, please allow me to search your body." Mao Dai smiled calmly as he raised his arms and signified for Ding Xiaochen to search as he pleased. However, he was feeling slightly astonished at this moment. This was because he had personally witnessed Ling Han entering the chariot, yet Ding Xiaochen actually hadn't managed to find any traces of him. This was truly strange. No wonder Ling Han had been brimming with confidence just then, telling him to let the Ding clan search all they wanted. In reality, Ling Han didn't need to seek his help in leaving the city at all. There were numerous convoys leaving the city these past few days, and with Ling Han's abilities, he simply needed to sneak into one of these convoys to leave without a trace. Mao Dai smiled faintly. Ling Han had most likely asked for his help to bid him farewell. Otherwise, Ling Han could have left without him ever knowing. This young man was fairly interesting. Anyhow, Mao Dai had no spatial god tool on him, so Ding Xiaochen naturally couldn't find anything at all. Ding Xiaochen looked at him in astonishment. Perhaps he was truly leaving the city for a spin? Can I leave the city now? Mao Dai asked calmly. Please go ahead, Brother Mao. Ding Xiaochen ordered the guards to step aside. Mao Dai entered the chariot and continued on his journey. However, after standing on the city walls and gazing at the disappearing chariot for a while, Ding Xiaochen suddenly leaped down and started to tail it. He had a nagging feeling that it was strange for Mao Dai to leave the city at this moment. Combined with Mao Dai's relationship with Ling Han, Ding Xiaochen subconsciously made the decision to tail him. Although he kept a great distance, his divine sense would definitely detect Ling Han if he were to appear in the chariot. However, it seemed as if Mao Dai were truly out for sightseeing. During the dozen or so days, he continued to travel around and visit different sites. This caused Ding Xiaochen to lose most of his patience. After all, he couldn't place all of his wagers on Mao Dai. What if he were only bait? Thus, after tailing him for another 3 days, Ding Xiaochen finally gave up and returned to Dark Moon City. Brat, you can come out now, Mao Dai said. He had naturally detected Ding Xiaochen tailing them. Although Ding Xiaochen had concealed himself extremely well, who was Mao Dai? He was the greatest prodigy behind Ding Yaolong. However, Ling Han didn't leave the Black Tower immediately. Only after waiting for half a day more did he suddenly appear in the chariot. He had no option but to do this. After all, when Mao Dai had called him just then, he had still been making love with the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. How could he stop? Thus, he could only make Mao Dai wait for a little longer. However, Ling Han naturally wouldn't reveal this. He simply said, "Thank you for helping, Senior." Mao Dai chuckled and said, "Even without my help, it would have been easy for you to leave. In a few months, I'll be bringing Zhang Chong to the Severing Mundane Pool. If you come across Zhang Chong inside, then please do help if you're able to." "Definitely," Ling Han replied. He then asked, "Senior, does one only need to enter a special place when severing the first mundane?" Mao Dai nodded and replied, "Generally speaking, yes. This is because only heaven and earth possess the power to sever the mundane. However, after the first time, one's body will also possess the engraving of such power. As such, one won't need to enter these special places anymore. However, due to the limitations of their talent, some people do indeed need to go to places such as the Severing Mundane Pool every time they sever a mundane. They need to comprehend the mystical power of heaven and earth anew before they can sever the second mundane, the third mundane, and so on." Ling Han nodded in understanding before respectfully bowing, and saying, "Then farewell, Senior." Mao Dai waved his hands, and said, "Farewell." However, he felt some slight pity after saying this, and he continued, "I initially wanted to betroth my daughter to you, but it's a shame that you have a keen habit of causing trouble. I certainly won't feel at ease if my daughter follows you." Ling Han grimaced upon hearing this, and he hurriedly quickened his pace. He genuinely didn't want to be involved in any more intimate relationships. He already had enough lovers to deal with. After walking for several days and finally leaving the range of influence of Dark Moon City, Ling Han let the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden out from the Black Tower. After all, he couldn't keep them trapped inside all the time. The three of them happily continued their journey. After walking for a dozen or so days, they arrived at another city. After entering this city, they immediately boarded a large ship. This could save them heaps of time. Otherwise, they would only arrive at the Severing Mundane Pool when it was already about to open. Ling Han and the Empress seized this opportunity to strengthen their comprehensions. There was only 1 year left, so if they couldn't comprehend enough about their cultivation, they would need to wait for another 10 million years. Or they could also go to another mystery realm to sever the mundane. Because they had an abundant supply of star stones, they bought whatever saint pills they wanted. In their eyes, these saint pills were cheap anyway. Ling started to refine alchemical pills in an almost wasteful manner. He cut out the most valuable portion of the saint pills which contained the comprehensions of heaven and earth, only leaving the portion that could elevate one's origin power. Otherwise, refining these alchemical pills would take far too long. He and the Empress took these alchemical pills every day. These were alchemical pills that could be eaten even after one reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier. This was a process of accumulation. Advancing to the severing mundane tier was hugely exhausting, so without enough origin power accumulated, one might end up completely draining themselves during the process. That would definitely be a tragedy. The Empress had already entered the final stages of preparation, and all she needed to do was sever the mundane now. Meanwhile, Ling was still continuing to accumulate origin power. After 1 month on the ship, he finally reached the peak stage of the Genesis tier as well. 10 billion heavenly bodies. However, he didn't stop here, and he continued to increase the number of heavenly bodies. This was the meaning of accumulation. Possessing more heavenly bodies wouldn't raise his battle prowess after he advanced to the severing mundane tier, but it could provide him with a huge reserve of origin power when he was in the process of advancing to the severing mundane tier. Another 3 months passed, and Ling finally disembarked from the ship with the Empress and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They arrived at Moon Scattering City, one of the farthest cities under the Black Moon sect's rule. If they continued forward, they would be venturing into regions controlled by forces of Hundred Magnificent City's Shao clan. Meanwhile, the severing mundane pool was located 15,000 or so kilometers away from Moon Scattering City. Theoretically speaking, the severing mundane pool should have belonged inside the territory of the Black Moon sect. However, because this was a border region, and because of the unique effects of this mystery realm, many people would especially travel over if they wanted to advance to the severing mundane tier, regardless of whether they were from Hundred Magnificent City's Shao clan or from the Fu clan. Of all the regions ruled by the Fu clan, the severing mundane pool was the best mystery realm for one to sever their mundane. Right now, there was less than 1 year until the severing mundane pool opened, so there were already countless Saint Kings gathered in Moon Scattering City. They were waiting to undergo the most important trial in their life. If they successfully advanced, they would become elites of the celestial realm. At the same time, they would truly break free from the cycle of aging, sickness, and death. However, if they failed to advance, they would almost certainly sever their own life. Moon Scattering City was brimming with people. Although this city was subordinate to the Black Moon sect, many of the forces inside this city were still eternal enemies with each other. Thus, conflicts often broke out, and it was normal to see scenes of chaos or scores of corpses in the mountains. Ling and his 2 wives were extremely low-key as they quietly cultivated and awaited the opening of the severing mundane pool. Another 10 months passed, and they left the city to travel to the severing mundane pool. Chapter 1726, Arrival of King Tears. Some time ago, in the Rock Palace in someplace in the Celestial Realm. Young Imperial Empress, Ling has already entered the Celestial Realm, a woman reported to Hunyo as she went down on one knee. There was a look of fervor on her face. Their Imperial Empress had successfully advanced to the severing mundane tier 100 or so years ago, and she had more so severed heaven and earth. She had become a king tier among king tiers. This was an achievement that few could rival, even among the holy sons and holy daughters of the other powerful forces. In reality, there was a notion of stronger or weaker even when it came to severing heaven and earth. One had to consider how thoroughly heaven and earth had been severed. The more thoroughly and viciously it was severed, the more powerful one would be. Hunyo was lazily lying down on a couch. She was a lazy person who definitely wouldn't stand if she could sit, and definitely wouldn't sit if she could lie down. Cultivating was truly torture for her, and if it weren't for that old hag always watching her, she would have gone to look for Ling long ago. Pa! Hunyo suddenly leaped up and laughed heartily, saying, "Where's Niu's Ling Han? Hurry, 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 Niu is going to look for him." There was an expression of indignance on the woman's face. Who was this Ling Han? Why was the young imperial empress always thinking about him? In her eyes, the young imperial empress was the most perfect person in the world. No man was worthy of her. However, could she ignore the young imperial empress question? "Young imperial empress, we currently don't know his whereabouts," the woman hurriedly replied. When opening the gate to the celestial realm, the point of entrance is largely random. Moreover, the celestial realm is also far too large. As such, it's extremely difficult to determine his whereabouts. Hu Niu wore the vicious expression of a petulant child as she said, "Niu doesn't care. Hurry up and find him. Niu wants to see Ling Han." "As you wish, young imperial empress." It wasn't long before 12 Dragonhawk teams flew out from the Rock Palace, each of which was led by an elite at the Immortal Palace tier and consisted of 10 soldiers at the Dividing Soul tier. They flew toward different regions in the celestial realm. They only had a single task, and that was to find a certain man in the huge celestial realm. Ling Han, the Empress, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden headed toward the Severing Mundane Pool, a mystery realm that was formed by heaven and earth. At normal times, the environment here was extremely harsh and unforgiving, resulting in no one being able to venture deep inside. If they tried to forcefully enter, they would be killed by the ferocious power of heaven and earth. The Severing Mundane Pool would only open once every 10 million years, and the meaning of open was that the power of heaven and earth inside would become largely manageable. As such, cultivators would be able to enter and venture into the depths of the Severing Mundane Pool. There, they would be able to sense the mystical power of heaven and earth that was related to the Severing Mundane tier. By comprehending it, they would then be able to sever a mundane or sever heaven and earth. If I'm not wrong, the Ding clan, Han clan, and Xiao clan will all be waiting there for me, Ling Han murmured as he stroked his chin. Am I truly that reprehensible? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden instantly gave a silvery laugh. Her husband was indeed a top-notch elite when it came to causing trouble. He was only a Genesis tier cultivator, yet he could already cause 3-star forces to suffer defeat. Moreover, he could even retreat in one piece. This was truly an immensely difficult feat. Let's keep a low profile. They were all dressed extremely conservatively, with not even their real appearances visible. Moreover, they also manipulated their aura such that even Severing Mundane tier Grand Elders could only detect their presence if they stood extremely close. Elites at the Dividing Soul tier and Immortal Palace tier could naturally observe a greater region, yet would such elites come to the Severing Mundane Pool? Perhaps Dividing Soul tier elites might, but as for Immortal Palace tier elites... Ling Han shook his head. This was the territory of a 3-star force, so Immortal Palace tier elites most likely wouldn't venture here. There was still a month or so until the Mystery Realm opened, yet far too many people had already gathered in the surrounding regions. Although these people all belonged to subordinate forces of the Fu clan, there was still quite a lot of conflict between them. It was extremely common to witness battles between cultivators and even between Severing Mundane tier Grand Elders. Xiaosheng has arrived, someone suddenly shouted in astonishment. Xiaosheng? Who's Xiaosheng? Many people asked in confusion. What? You guys haven't heard of Xiaosheng? He defeated Changsun Liang 2 years ago. Changsun Liang? The Black Moon sect's Changsun Liang? Gasp. It was impossible for news of Xiaosheng's victory over Changsun Liang to travel throughout the entire territory of the Fu clan in just 2 years. Thus, this piece of news naturally astonished everyone. Changsun Liang was well-renowned, and he was publicly acknowledged as a king tier of the younger generation. In fact, there was no one in the Fu clan who could rival him. Yet, someone had actually defeated Changsun Liang? This instantly triggered a huge commotion. Could it be Hundred Magnificence City's Xiao clan? Yes, it's that Xiao clan. How impressive. They produced a prodigy who's even more powerful than Changsun Liang. They can definitely reach the Immortal Palace tier in the future. Heh, you guys don't know, do you? Several prodigies have emerged these past few years, and Changsun Liang is already a prodigy of the past. Huh. Indeed, the desolate north has produced Songji, and heaven-holding city has produced Maing, both of whom can be regarded as king tiers. Most astonishingly, the Fu clan has produced a supreme divine fetus. Everyone in the surroundings drew a sharp breath. Even in the celestial realm, the words, divine fetus, couldn't be thrown around lightly. This represented the most powerful physique in the world, a physique that would appear in fewer than 1 in 1 trillion people. Who is it? Fu Xiaoyun. Not only does she possess a supreme divine fetus, but she's also stunningly beautiful. Just a glance at her beauty can cause your soul to fly into the sky. Is she also coming here to sever the mundane? Of course. If she misses this opportunity, she'll need to wait another 10 million years. To young king tiers, 10 million years is far too long. During this time, their opponents might have already become second severance grand elders. Ling Han was also slightly astonished upon hearing this. Another divine fetus had appeared. There were 2 ways to develop a divine fetus. The first method was to be naturally born, and this depended on one's parents and ancestors. According to rumors, one would have a larger probability of giving birth to a divine fetus if there existed a celestial king among their ancestors. Otherwise, one would need to be extremely fortunate. The second method was to cultivate some kind of special celestial king tier cultivation technique. An example of this was Gu Daoi, who had accumulated his cultivation for 10 lifetimes before developing a divine fetus. Anyhow, Ling Han was curious about how powerful the Fu clan's divine fetus was compared to the Empress. Meanwhile, the Empress wore an expression of pride and haughtiness. She was confident that she could definitely win. Ling Han gazed into the surroundings. He saw Xiaosheng, who after nearly 2 years had naturally recovered from his wounds already. Although he had been severely wounded by Ling Han and the Empress at that time, the Xiao clan had treated his wounds without any regard for the costs. He was to the Xiao clan what Changsun Liang was to the Black Moon sect. Moreover, Xiaosheng had already cleansed himself of the disappointment of losing to Ling Han that day. Moreover, he was now brimming with confidence after his victory over Changsun Liang. He viewed everyone else with disdain. As a king tier, he was naturally proud and haughty. Several days passed, and more king tiers arrived. Song Jive King Tier, who had recently found fame in the desolate north, was one of them. His battle prowess was terrifying, and many regarded him as invincible among those below the severing mundane tier. Ma Ying was another of the king tiers. She was a precious daughter of heaven-holding city, and she was also praised as invincible among those under the severing mundane tier. According to rumors, Song Ji and Ma Ying were also distant cousins. Thus, the 2 large clans that they belonged to were interested in connecting through their marriage. If this eventuated, they would most likely become the most powerful force under the rule of the Fu clan. In fact, they might even develop the ability to challenge the rule of the Fu clan in the future. Apart from them, Fu Xiaoyun had also arrived. Moreover, she surprisingly hadn't been accompanied by elites from the Fu clan. She sat cross-legged on a mountain, and her appearance was so beautiful that it was enough to make one's heart flutter. However, there was a sword resting on her lap, and she was radiating with a killing intent that warned others to stay away. Changsun Liang has arrived. Another 2 days passed, and commotion swept through the sea of cultivators again. The cultivators were even more fervent than when Song Ji, Xiaosheng, and Fu Xiaoyun had arrived. After all, this was a publicly acknowledged king tier. Chapter 1727, Bei Xuanming. Commotion swept through the crowd of cultivators. Changsun Liang was a publicly acknowledged and well-renowned king tier. Even though there were rumors of people defeating him and people rivaling him, none of these rumors could affect his status in everyone's minds. He was someone everyone desired to surpass but couldn't. In fact, he was so powerful that his might was deeply engraved in everyone's mind. This wasn't something that could be changed by a few rumors. Xiaoxing couldn't help but chuckle coldly. Was there anything for his vanquished opponent to be proud about? He wore an expression of disdain as he crossed his arms before his chest. However, no one paid any attention to his behavior. He was extremely displeased, and he said, "Changsun Liang, do you dare battle me?" Changsun Liang glanced at him, and said, "We can naturally battle after advancing to the severing mundane tier." He wasn't confident that he could win at this moment, so battling against Xiaoxing was very likely to end up with both of them severely wounded. At that time, neither of them would be able to advance to the severing mundane tier. Changsun Liang had been famous for many years, and his mind as a king tier was also unwavering. Thus, he naturally wouldn't disadvantage himself for such trivial matters. Anyhow, they were still on the path of growth, so was it truly necessary to fight for temporary victory and struggle for temporary fame? However, his reply was also an admission of Xiaoxing's strength. Otherwise, he could have easily defeated his opponent in 2 or 3 exchanges without speaking a single word of nonsense. It was also because of this that everyone gained a new understanding of Xiaoxing. However, Xiaoxing still felt extremely displeased. He could clearly defeat Changsun Liang, so why was he only gaining respect because of Changsun Liang's words? He humphed in reply. After reaching the severing mundane tier, he would definitely pummel Changsun Liang and let everyone know that he was the true king tier. Ha 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 ha. Song Ji stood up and laughed heartily before saying, "Brother Changsun, I also want to spar with you after reaching the severing mundane tier. However, it's best that you don't lose to anyone else. Otherwise, it's beneath me to challenge a loser." Beside him, Ma Ying's beautiful eyes were also burning with fighting spirit. She also wanted to defeat the current king tier to become the new king tier. However, Changsun Liang's expression remained calm. Since he was a king tier, he naturally had to possess a mindset of invincibility. He had to remain unfazed regardless of how many people challenged him. However, he couldn't help but grumble in his mind. If Ling Han and the Empress were here, they could dispose of these people far too easily. They would pummel them into questioning life. Has Ling Han come? He glanced around, searching for signs of Ling Han. However, Ling Han and his wives were all in disguise, and had suppressed their aura. Thus, Changsun Liang naturally couldn't discover them. Meanwhile, Ling Han didn't want to greet Changsun Liang either. This was because he had offended far too many people, so greeting Changsun Liang would needlessly drag him into his affairs. As for Fu Xiaoyun, she remained silent the entire time. Either she was truly gentle and didn't have any desire of defeating others, or she was extremely confident in herself, and found it beneath her to defeat Xiaoxing and the others to increase her sense of existence. Members of the Ding clan had also arrived, though they weren't here to send members of their clan into the severing mundane pool, but rather they were here to look for Ling Han. However, there were millions of cultivators here, and many of them were even accompanied by seniors of their clans. Thus, with the Ding clan's power, they still couldn't force the others to obediently cooperate with them. That being the case, would it be easy to find Ling Han? As for the Han clan, they genuinely couldn't extend their influence so far. If they dared to send people here, that would be equivalent to directly provoking the Fu clan. Thus, they definitely couldn't do this. In reality, there were many more prodigies here than just Changsun Liang, Fu Xiaoyun, and the others. Moreover, there were also some cultivators who were slightly inferior, and these people had placed all of their hopes on reaching the severing mundane tier. As long as they flawlessly severed the mundane, their battle prowess would be far superior to those at the same cultivation level. The severing mundane tier was just as the name suggested. However, what mundane matter one severed and how thoroughly they severed it would all affect the quality of their cultivation level. Thus, there existed a notion of the weakest severance, normal severance, and flawless severance. King tiers and prodigies would naturally aim to perform a flawless severance. However, few of them realized that they could sever heaven and earth instead of severing a mundane matter that pertained to themselves. Several days passed, and it was getting closer and closer to the day when the severing mundane pool would open. Everyone started to become slightly tense and nervous. After all, the step of severing the mundane was far too important. Only by succeeding would one genuinely enter the world of cultivation of the celestial realm. Huh! Look over there, someone suddenly shouted as they pointed at the sky. Everyone looked over, only to see a giant ape in the sky. Its fur was golden, and it was dozens of kilometers tall. However, this was only a mount used to carry a green bamboo ship. The bamboo ship wasn't large, only measuring at most 30 meters in length. However, judging by the golden ape's expression of exertion, this was an incredibly heavy ship. The golden ape huffed and puffed with each step that it took. Which force was this? Look at that emblem, some eagle-eyed person shouted in astonishment as they discovered a moon-shaped emblem on the green bamboo ship. It's the lunar sect, many people shouted in unison. The lunar sect was also a 3-star force, though it was located fairly far away from the territory of the Fu clan. However, of the nearby hundreds of 3-star forces, the lunar sect could rank inside the top 10. This wasn't a force that the Fu clan could rival. Theoretically speaking, the lunar sect definitely shouldn't have come here. After all, the lunar sect also had mystery realms similar to the severing mundane pool in their territory. Thus, was there any need for them to travel here? Perhaps some supreme treasure had appeared in the surroundings. The giant ape slowly descended with the green bamboo ship. This was an immortal beast, yet its primal ferocity hadn't disappeared yet. It continued to bare its fangs and roar at the cultivators in the surroundings. At this moment, a man walked out from the green bamboo ship. His clothes were elegant, and his figure was slender. As he walked, he radiated with the demeanor of a king tier. This was a dazzling aura of absolute confidence. Severing mundane tier, many powerful figures exclaimed in astonishment upon seeing the young man. Although age would become irrelevant after one reached the severing mundane tier, those who reached the severing mundane tier at an age of several million years old or tens of millions of years old would still astonish those around them. After all, this represented their astounding talent. This young man was at most 100,000 years old. Gasp! A severing mundane tier grand elder at only 100,000 years old? Could they find such a prodigy in the Fu clan's territory? Xiaoyun, the young man said with a proud and haughty smile as he quickly turned his gaze to Fu Xiaoyun. I heard that you were about to sever the mundane, so I decided to come here to accompany you. Anyhow, I also need to perform my second severance, so we can enter the severing mundane pool together. Second severance? Gasp! Such a young first severance grand elder was already shocking enough, yet this person was actually about to advance to the second severance? This was far too freakish. Fu Xiaoyun nodded in greeting, and a rare smile spread across her face. These two were. Some people knew their relationship, so they told it to everyone else. This young man was called Xuanming, and he was the holy son of the lunar sect. Moreover, the Fu clan and the lunar sect had intentions of improving their relationship through marriage, and the couple in question was none other than Xuanming and Fu Xiaoyun. Why was it them two? This was because both had obtained the good graces of the Return to Origin Palace, a 4-star force. They could both enter this super powerful force, and of the nearby hundreds of 3-star forces, this was an honor that only the two had received. This information started to spread, and everyone could only listen on in envy. Xuanming was a supreme king tier and the holy son of a large sect, and now he even had a stunningly beautiful and powerful partner in Fu Xiaoyun. His life was already perfect, so what more could he desire? I've heard that there are several self-proclaimed king tiers here. Step forward so I can check you out, Xuanming said as he swept his cold gaze across everyone. He wore an expression of contempt as he continued, before me, Xuanming, who dares to call themselves a king tier? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.